Hey guys, it's me, Sugar, and I'm here with my husband, Jeff.
Hello.
And today we were going to talk about our top 10 anime of the year. And to start, we're going to do like we did last year and have some honorable mentions. So this means that we're looking at some anime that, we talked about that were close to being on the top 10. There were ones that just needed to be mentioned because they brought something to the table this year.
Yes.
So let's start with our first one, which is Be the Beginning.
Yeah.
I don't feel like we have to go really in depth because I did a video about Be the Beginning.
Yeah.
But long story short, I thought it was a really great dark thriller. It kind of had a mixture of Sherlock Holmes along with kind of the fantastical. Can I say that?
Science fiction, biblical
Fantasy.
integration. Yeah.
Yeah, and some of you weren't too keen on it, and that's okay, to each their own. And I know even Jeff said, it could have been a little better if it was just one story versus another. He's referring to the fact that there's the very much Sherlock Holmes version, the cops and the mystery and finding that out. Then there's the other part that's very kind of biblical, very fantastical creature sort of thing. And he just wishes there was that one narrative instead of the two.
I feel like when you there's a way to do it when you combine essentially two different narratives and have them going on at the same time and whatnot. And Be the Beginning does it fairly well, but I would have rather had like an entire, let's say, 10 episode run telling the one story, and then 10 episodes telling the other story, and then almost then having like a third season where you amalgamate the two into what I feel they're going to do in the future, because I think it seems to me like they're setting up for another season.
They've definitely set up for another season, and the second season is confirmed, but I'm just excited for it to continue. I was okay with the amalgamation of the two narratives. I was okay with that. It's very rare. I shouldn't say rare, but it is kind of rare as an anime fan to get a quality thriller for me. So this was exciting for me. And it was on Netflix, which was an even bigger surprise. It was an original, and I can't go wrong with Men with a Mission. Of course, they did the intro and outro for them. So, I found everything was great. Voice acting, character development, the different kind of narratives. I really liked it. So, yeah, I feel like that's all that needs to be said. Didn't make it this year for top 10, but for a while we were considering it. But other things made their way.
It probably would have been up there if not for fall having a couple of series that came a knocking. Yeah. So it was right up until the last season. And Be the Beginning started right up, I think, in January. So like it was an early year show.
Yes. So Be the Beginning on Netflix. Very good, in my opinion.
I think it's very good too. Like I said, I would have rather seen more of it.
More of it? What do you mean?
I would rather have 10 episodes where it does the Sherlock Holmes part, 10 episodes where it does the fantastical, and then you could have done...
I'm okay with it being both.
Yeah,
I feel like it's a world that... It's kind of like, again, I always say it like Baccano. Just because there's more than one thing going on doesn't mean that it's not good.
See, but I think that you could have done like one or the other first and given hints as to what was going on the other
but then
side,
I find that you would have separated your audience. It's like, the one season, everyone would be like, yeah, I love the mystery and thriller aspect. And the other part is like, I like the fantastical, the beast, the creatures, the fighting. And it's two different... concepts put together, and it brings in the whole audience instead of two separate audiences.
See, but we don't have enough anime that dare...
We don't have enough anime.
We don't have enough anime that dare to do something like that. And that's where I think would have... That's where I would have liked it. I would have liked for them to be ballsy enough to just be like, we know we've got a lot of content.
I feel like this was ballsy. Was ballsy. It was taking two original ideas, mashing them together, making a story... and having like killer music, killer ideas, and just having great character development. So few times I can say, oh, the story was really good and great character development. There's almost never an and lately. It's one or the other.
I would have liked it if they would have been, or what you could have done is have them be like partner anime series. They release them both at the same time, and you choose which one you wanted to watch first.
But I can understand why a lot of people found it a bit confusing because it was very fast paced in a lot of places, and a lot of areas that had writing on the screen, and to kind of get all that information at once. And I totally understand it's a bit fast paced. And around the second season or before it, if you want me to, I was talking about maybe making a video about breaking down the first season, because some of you were lost, but you basically just sent me messages and I answered back because I didn't get enough questions to substantiate a video at this point. But anyways, be the beginning. So we'll talk about our next one on Netflix, Hisune Tomasatan. It was unique in the sense that it was with dragons, it was with pilots, it had a unique art style, very newspaper comic-esque. It was very different, and I didn't really know what to expect, and the voiceover was really good for the sub, make that very clear, because we watched the dub and it was pretty bad. I don't want to say horrific.
To be fair, we watched the first episode because we had already finished the entire series.
I watched more than the first episode.
And it was like, ooh.
It was rough.
I'm okay. I'm okay with some.
The thing with it, that I can say about it, which even for some good anime, I can't say about it, is it had really good opener and closer.
Yes.
It was very catchy. It was very well done, well animated. It was fun.
It changed with
the
what
ending.
Was changing in the... No, the intro did too.
Oh, I see what you mean, yes. Depending on where you were in the story, it didn't want to let anything be revealed that it shouldn't. Yeah. So it kind of changed as the story went along, which was really appreciated. I thought you were going to say, depending on what the focus was in the story for the girls, that voiceover actress would sing the end.
Oh, yeah.
So that's why I was like, oh, that's it.
Yeah.
I thought that's where you were going.
I was thinking, no, the intro changes, I think, twice throughout its run.
Yeah.
To reflect kind of more of what's actually happening.
Right.
It's another anime where, it starts off kind of with one sort of vision, and then it goes, it not like a 180, but it takes like a 90-degree turn, and you're like, whoa, I didn't see that coming.
The first few episodes, I was like, I don't know if I like this. It seems weird. But then once it got its footing and kept going, it was
once
good.
It made that, okay, we're going to turn the corner here, then it was like, we couldn't stop watching.
Yeah.
I need the next episode.
And it kept adding to it. You're like, okay, I understand this world. It's like, but then there's this, and you're like, oh. So that's also a factor, yeah.
And then there's this.
Okay.
Like, whoa, wait, what?
So then you're trying to think in your head, you're like, are these the only options? I guess? You'll know when you see it. But yeah, if you're looking for kind of a cutesy, serious, fun, mythological time, you should go watch it. It's such a hard thing to explain.
That's the thing.
It's an adventure, it's military, it's girls being girls, growing up, kind of around a male-centric, Air Force. Mm-hmm. It's very interesting. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And that's where we'll leave it. So it didn't make our top 10, but considered it.
It's going to be one of those things where I think almost just as many people are going to be like, I don't get it, this is weird, as much as they're like, this is so unique and interesting and new.
Yeah.
And we were looking at some anime that are coming up now in 2019, and we're like, oh, I wonder where you got the inspiration for this. It was Hisune Tomasatan.
Yeah,
I also believe I put out a video for that on your channel.
You did. I think why it was a gem of the season. I believe that's what it was titled.
Hidden gem or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I still believe that. I still really enjoy it.
It's a twist that you don't see coming.
Yeah.
By the end, I had no idea where it was going.
2018 has been a very strong year where even a really good 7 doesn't make the top 10.
Yeah, there were a bunch of 7s where well, does it trump this? Does it trump this? Because we made an entire list. This was going on for weeks. This was not taken lightly. I'm not even joking. We bickered for weeks.
The fact we have 6 in just our honorable mentions that we were like, we could have put those in.
Yeah.
It was a strong year.
It was strong, yeah. And so, like I said, again, these are things we're mentioning because they were different. They brought something to the table. They were interesting. Something about them got buzz, and that's why we're talking about them. So let's talk about something else that was surprising, which was Eurocamp. It's so weird to say that because I was like, oh, when somebody was explaining this to me initially, we were on the bandwagon early, but when somebody was explaining to me, the upcoming season, they're like, oh, it's these girls that go camping. And I was like, and what else? And they're like, that's it.
They go camping.
I was like, okay.
It's the story of them camping. And I guess we did know going in that it was like a school club thing.
Yeah.
So that was
But that's the thing, and it's like, so what are they gonna do?
Yeah.
They're like, camp. I was like, and then what? Like, you're always waiting for the synopsis to keep going. It's like,
and then
it's like, do they
the
find something in the forest?
monsters
Yeah, it's like, do they find something in the
They get Blair
forest? Did they
Witch.
get lost? Like, they're like, no, they just camp, and that's literally the premise. It's such feel-good vibes. The soundtrack is pleasant. The girls are pleasant. Everything about it is just pleasant. Something you put on when you're eating and you chill with the characters. Like, they're having ramen, so are you. They're having some, pork cutlets, so are you. It's just chill, and it catches the whole vibe of camping. Just going out with friends
and it's
just
oddly
chilling.
like it's instructional at times.
Yeah.
Like we were Sugar and I were kind of wondering at the time. We're like, is this anime trying to get people like
info?
into camping? Because we live
a lot
in
of
Canada.
people were.
Yeah, we live in Canada, so camping is not something that's foreign to Sugar and I.
We've
done
gone
it a lot
lots.
before, and so like just some of the stuff that they would mention, we were like, well, yeah, like that's common knowledge, but that's common knowledge here.
Yeah.
We have a lot of open space, a lot of wooded area, a lot of just places where you can go and camp.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of open wilderness, whereas in Japan, I don't think they've got as
It's
much.
a bit more crowded, yeah. I was speaking to some of my Japanese and Chinese friends, and I was like, have you gone camping just out of, like, curiosity? Because I live here now. And they're like, not so much. Like, it's scary for us to think about. And I said, okay. I said, I was just wondering because I was watching, this. And so I was showing them, and they're like, oh, yeah, no, we don't go camping. Like, we were in the cities, then we moved here, and then we hover around the city. I was like, okay, that's fine. So yeah, it's just a pleasant time. And, for a lot of people, even people who live in Canada, some people have just never gone out of their comfort zone and just chilled out in the wilderness. And being out in the wilderness is the most chill you can be. It's just quiet, it's peaceful, it's nice, it's the environment. It's beautiful.
And yeah, they do a very good job animation-wise of showing kind of the beauty of those areas.
Yeah, the mountainside.
Legitimately, like people were finding these places actually exist.
Yeah.
So people were finding them on Google Maps, and they're like, yeah, they were right here.
Yeah.
And
they're like, I've been
here's
here.
how you could go here. And I was
People were excited.
that's really cool. I would love for them to do that, like in Canada.
Yeah.
We'd
be like,
this
oh,
is
we've
where
been
you'd
there.
be in Canada, yeah. And so it makes sense. I like that. I like the little extra bits, like where they teach you how to sort of cook.
Yeah, and make a campfire, how to properly stoke the fire and stuff like that. Like just cute little things like that. And I love what it did to the community because it's just a huge onslaught of conversations of how can I go camping? How much should it cost? Is it like what they said? Blah, 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 blah. Like everyone started appreciating that. And I love that about anime, that it just brings a whole new set of fans towards something else. Mm-hmm. And it's what anime does. Other than, bring up Best Bay competitions.
Or, something in our top 10. We're talking about cataclysmic events and all sorts of stuff. Lots of things going on in our top 10 this year.
Next honorable mention is Hinomaru Sumo. That was Jeff's pick, and he'll say that till the day he dies.
Yes, that was my pick.
And for something that is a sports anime, I find that it's been really good. The characters are very enjoyable. The story is very good. The opener and closer are good. The closer, very much so. I've played it a lot, and I'm sure you've seen me playing it and having it on Twitter and everything else is good. But it's been enjoyable. It's been a surprise for two people that don't usually get deep into sports anime. I'm planning to, but as everything else, I have 100 other things literally on my plan to watch list. So it's been a uphill. I was like, oh, it happens this season. I can get into this sport.
Yeah. And I mean, I would say both you and I would actually recommend Hinomaru Sumo over even Megalobox, which has been, lots of people have been really enjoying Megalobox.
Yeah.
It's the thing with me that brought me to kind of picking it beyond just kind of the look and the general the general vibes that I felt from the trailers was that sumo wrestling as an art form is something that I've always kind of had a little bit of an interest in. Never enough to go and do a deep dive into how the sport works and everything like that. And it does. Hinomaru Sumo does an excellent job of taking what is honestly a quite complex sort of sport and really just breaks down how it all works, how our main character the only way that they can really get into the sport professionally at a high level, what they need to be able to do. And it does a really good job of showing a lot of different styles of sumo, which I didn't know really existed. I didn't know there was like, oh, there are people who do sumo kind of in like a quick way where they try to like trip you as opposed to, you know, the slapping or the kind of tossing each other around.
Yeah,
sort of
there's stuff with the belts, there's stuff with striking, there's stuff with balance, there's stuff with footwork, there's stuff with weight, you know. It's different things that, again, something that the enemy community is getting more involved with, where we start understanding that concept. It's kind of like Eurocamp, but with sumo.
Yeah.
It's us getting interested in sumo, something that I'd never been considered thinking about in a serious way.
And it's it does have, you know, some of that. It's part of the reason why, you know, it doesn't hit our top 10, where it's like, I'm going to use the demon throw technique and the double demon wheel and things like that.
It's stuff that's a little bit, but it's not too far out of the realms. It just adds a little extra flair to make it more entertaining.
And again, these are like high school students, so it makes sense that they would come up with cheesy names for their moves and things like that.
They're not cheesy. They're cute.
The demon wheel.
I would totally call my move the demon wheel, even if I was an adult. I am an adult. Even if I was an adult, I am an adult. I'm an adult. Yeah.
But yeah, it's very good. It is a great mix of.
I am a shit. Sorry, I just thought of Game Grumps. I was thinking of their Wind Waker. It's just like, we need a boat. I am a boat.
Oh, goodness. No, that's fine.
Anyways.
I love Game Grumps as well.
Yeah.
It's just an excellent mix of kind of your standard shonen with a sports anime.
But I think why it's also enjoyable, like, we get to look at our characters. Each one of them has a different drive. Each one of them has a different purpose. Each one of them has something different about them. And the fact is, you see the determination. And I understand that because, as I've told you many times before, I've been in a lot of things, but soccer I was really passionate about. And I was the same, where I was like, I was the one out on the field doing solo drills. I was the one, like, I wanted to get better. I didn't care if anyone else was there. That's kind of like this, where there's people that are just so determined to get better. You'll see them out there. They'll be doing it, you know?
And you can't help but cheer for them.
Yeah.
And also, like, even the opponents, like, none of the opponents have come across like, well, you're a jerk, and I hate you, and I want you to fail.
Down,
it's more like, well, no, I want my protagonists to win, but you guys are pretty cool too.
Yeah.
You might be a little full of yourself, but it seems that that's maybe a little bit part of sumo as a whole, where if you're like 170-0, you should kind of act that way.
What do you mean?
Well, in the sense of there's characters out there who kind of look at the others and they're like, you started sumo 5 months ago. What are you even doing here?
Yeah.
Like, there's a deep respect for the tradition, and that there are characters who are like, you know, 170-0. They're like, why would I even make you think that you have a prayer?
Yeah.
And that seems to be, though, maybe a bit of a part of the sport, where if you're 170-0 and you've got this person who's like, I've done 4 professional fights, you're kind of like, no, come back when you have actually when you've
honed yourself,
when you've honed your abilities,
when you've actually got a chance against me.
Yeah. and I respect that too. I don't expect that I can walk up to LeBron James and be like, yeah, I've sunk a few 3-pointers, let's go 1-on-1. LeBron's just going to be like, no.
Yeah.
I mean, LeBron might do it with little kids to be nice, but this is a professional thing. I'm like, I'll bet you $20 I could beat you. LeBron's gonna be like, no.
Yeah.
What are you? You're 6 feet tall. You're nothing.
One of my favorite stories I told Jeff, and I'm not gonna say who it is because I was like, I don't want people to get the wrong impression. But a long time ago, I was in curling, and I thought I was pretty hot shit because we went to provincials. And I ran into an Olympic team.
and you didn't know at first.
Oh, I knew who they were.
Oh.
I was 100%.
Why would you do this then?
Because I was so full of shit. I thought I was hot shit. And I was just like, I was like, let's do let's do an end. Let's do this together. Like, just do a quick, game. And they indulged us and murdered us. But it's just like that thing where it's just like, you want to keep striving, you want to keep going, And yeah.
Yeah.
Let's say,
Yeah.
to that story, yes, it's true. The person I challenged, because we saw them as a team, but their head player wasn't with them at the moment. So I didn't know who they were, but when she walked out, I still held my gun.
I'm great. I'm 14 years
As soon as I saw her, I was like, fuck. I was like, let's do this. Yeah, they cleaned our clocks. But we stood no chance. But anyways, it's kind of like that. I want to see that in anime, where it's like, if you are new to it and you are like fresh to it, like some of the characters are, you shouldn't be winning every few rounds just because they're your main cast. And I appreciate that, where it's not like you don't stack up. Like, you're in a field that you don't belong in right now. Like, this is you trying, and that's okay, but you're going to go down. Like, it's great. But anyways, let's move on. Very last one is Megalobox. The reason it didn't get into our top 10 is because we compared all of the ones we had in our top 10, and to some extent it just didn't stack up. For me personally, Megalobox felt like it was, I don't want to use the word cheap imitation because that seems rude. No, seriously, it just feels like a nostalgia grab, if that makes sense, because it feels like they're taking, the old version, Ashita no Joe, and they're revamping it to basically be something new, but it's not. And then they're basically making it look like Cowboy Bebop, having music like Samurai Champloo.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're looking at it, a lot of the robotics don't make sense. And in some worlds, that's fine. You don't need sense to make sense of everything. But this drives me crazy. Because boxers already hit like a fucking shit brick house. Like, if you've met a real boxer, they are terrifying.
Yeah.
And, like, I feel like that's not needed. And it's, 13 episodes? I felt like the pacing was way off. Like, already by the 4th episode, they're like, oh, you've seen, like, this one serious fight, and 2 already happened. You don't need to see those. I was like, what? That's the whole point. I wanted to watch those. And it's like, well, okay. And to me, that's one of the reasons why it didn't make top 10. It was just something about it didn't feel right. It's not that it's bad. It's not that it's great. It's just is what it is, if that makes sense.
Well, I mean, like
I know people are really talking about that, like, oh, Cowboy Bebop. That's all you hear out of people's voices, or out of their voices, out of their mouth, is it sounds like Cowboy Bebop. It sounds like Cowboy Bebop. Holy crap, I can't talk. Looks like Cowboy Bebop. And that's true. It does. But that is not what a good anime make. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just because it has these qualities from really great things like Samurai Champloo, Cowboy Bebop, and the old Ashita no Joe, doesn't make it good. And I feel like it took that nostalgia and it's like, look, like, it's okay.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of people are like, oh yeah, definite, like, anime of the year. I was like, why? Why?
Yeah, I mean, Sugar and I, before we were recording, we're kind of talking about it, and I think it's a little bit deeper than she kind of gives it credit for. I think it's doing a really good meta commentary.
Just cynical.
Well, no, I think it does a good meta commentary on the current state of boxing, which is that the best performing boxing match of the year was between 2 people who aren't boxers. It was a couple of YouTube stars who decided that they wanted to make a bunch of money and punch each other in the face for 6 rounds. And that made more money than any title match in boxing over probably the last 5 years. So the idea of having these essentially mechanical arms punching for you instead of your own is just upping the ante. It is making a commentary on boxing. Now, it isn't a commentary that needs to be made because boxing has been dying as a sport since the late 1990s.
And he's not being disrespectful. We both love boxing.
Yeah.
It's just fact.
And ever since MMA has become the leading combat sport, people are like, well, I could watch boxing, or I can watch a much more intricate fighting style.
It's like, oh, he knows jiu-jitsu and taekwondo and blah, 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 blah. Like,
yeah, and,
instead of, like, who can get the concussion first?
And we're going to see, somebody who normally is known for striking against somebody who's normally known for grappling, and we've got wrestlers, and just, there's a whole lot more intricacy and a lot more at play with MMA. And so the idea with Megaloboxer seems to be that at some point, boxing is just going to be dead. What do you do to revive it? And so in this world, it was, let's attach essentially artificial punching machines to their shoulders, and we'll almost kill them every single match. Which, let's be fair, when Mike Tyson was destroying people in the late 80s and early 90s, more people cared about boxing. So boxing kind of gets more popular when you have somebody who's known as a vicious knockout artist.
And somebody who bites your ear off.
Well, that's neither here nor there.
It's memorable.
I'm just saying is that it makes sense for what has become of boxing that Megalobox would kind of move forward, but they don't say anything with that. The show isn't about the meta commentary on boxing.
No.
They almost assume that you know that's what they're doing. They're like, yeah, this is obviously what we're doing, so just watch and enjoy.
I feel like it's like, it's not so over-exaggerated, but it's like taking Beyblade and then tying knives to it. It's like extreme.
Hey, I mean, in the Beyblade anime, they got animals coming out of them and tigers fighting dragons
Those are like
and stuff like
spirits
that.
and stuff, yeah.
But, yeah, it's...
Or like one of those Roombas with a knife.
And at the end of the day, we have got a bunch of 8s, a bunch of 9s, and a couple of 10s in our top 10. If this is a 7.5, it doesn't make the list.
Yeah.
And 7.5 is not a bad anime.
Yeah.
It's a good anime. I would say that this is good. It's just
it's
the top
not
10
great.
is great.
Yeah.
You know,
and that's
beyond.
the thing. We've talked it over for weeks. We're not even kidding.
Yeah, we talked it so much you forgot one of our honorable mentions.
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
I did not.
Yes, you did.
No. It begins with a Z?
No.
What are you talking about?
Well, Gaku and Babysitters.
Oh, shit. Yeah, I did.
Considering how much you championed
I thought you were wanting to bring up Zombieland. I was like, what? No.
No. It's Gaku and Babysitters.
I did. I wasn't... Whatever. I got distracted because somebody called. It's cut in the video, but that's why I got distracted. Anyways, last but not least, Gaku and Babysitters.
Yes.
It was something I heat and hawed about being in the top 10 just because there's so many good things about it, but again, it just didn't compete with what we had. We were actually comparing it to last year of how it stacked up, and so that was interesting. But anyways, Gaku and Babysitters is what we told you about, where these two boys lose their parents and end up being adopted and going to school. While being at school, part of the agreement of being taken in is that they babysit. And it's really good. It's not just a simple, oh, kids are cute, therefore it's a cute anime. It's very heartfelt and serious and has good stories, has great characters, has very likable kids, very likable students, very likable everything.
It's very realistic to what kids are like. And Sugar and I can speak to this as teachers. Just earlier today, I was teaching grade 1 students, and so we have an idea of the kids that are being
portrayed.
They're
it's
preschool. They're preschool,
accurate.
but they are very accurate. Where some kids will just start crying out of nowhere, and you have no idea why.
Oh, and then you'll find out like an hour later, so and so took my giraffe, and it's like, oh my god, that was the problem.
And then like you've got two characters who can really never be separated because they're like brothers.
Yeah,
but
they're
one
dependent
is
on each other.
One is the happy one, and one's like the sad, concerned one.
And that's so odd because it happens so often with twins, which is so funny.
It is just a wonderful representation of what it would be like, and
to have a younger sibling, to have being a caretaker or even a babysitter.
The way in which the older sibling and then all of his eventual friends kind of interact with him too, because there's some who are like,
some are very different.
They hold the kids at arm's length, and they're like, I don't really like kids. They're slobbering all over you and stuff like that, and then it's really heartwarming when the kids are like, well, we really like you, and she's like, they like me?
Yeah, why did they like me?
But then they snot all over her, and she's like, ew!
Yeah,
so,
I take it back.
Yeah, lots of people, they love little kids until the little kids do gross things little kids do, and then they're like, ew.
So if you're looking for something that's very sweet and endearing, and if you have kids or siblings, you can totally relate to this.
Kids,
it's totally relatable.
It is.
And everything. Like, the first episode made me tear up, and I was like, damn, that was well written.
Yeah, it is. very well written. It's very
oh,
earnest. It's very endearing.
I remember the witch episode. Oh, that made me cry. Oh, I'm such a weeper. I'm like devil man. Anyways, I cry over other people's sadness. But anyways, those were our main ones. So we had Be the Beginning, we had Yuru Camp, Hisune Tomasaton, Hinamaru Sumo, Gaku and Babysitters, and did I say Megalobox?
Yeah. Yep.
I should have just said them in order.
That's
so we had our
we've
6.
got our 7, I think.
6. Be the Beginning, Gaku and Babysitters, Megalobox, Euro Camp, Hinamaru Sumo, Hisune Tomasaton. So that is 6. And if you're wondering why we didn't mention Zombieland Saga, if you watch it and see the CG, you'll understand why.
You know what? The very fact that it has Sugar and I
can say
watching that style of anime, because we are not Idol fans at all.
No, we've never watched an Idol anime for that reason.
But it has bad CG, and we normally don't watch Idol shows.
Yeah.
And we watch Zombieland Saga.
So there's something to be said, like, the main characters are likable, and, you know, the Shades guy, as I call him, Shades, is very, like, he's having one hell of a time voice acting that.
Kiyoma.
Yeah. But anyways, enough with the honorable mentions and our kind of secondary mention there. Let's get into the meat of it, our top 10. So this is something we both agreed on, weeks of bickering. Let's go. So we'll start from the end. Our number 10 is Legend of the Galactic Heroes. Obviously, the remake.
Yes.
So, a lot of people had a lot of flack over this, but let's not even consider the fact that it's a remake. Let's look at it as it is.
Yeah,
And that's how we wanted to look at it, because we never fully watched the first one. We've seen bits, pieces, when we've had time, but we've never watched it fully. After the fact, I've watched more because people compare and contrast and all that good stuff. But, let's look at it as it is.
Yes.
One of the few times I get really mad when people use CG, especially, not all the time, but when they use it really badly. Like Zombieland Saga, I was really mad. Unnecessarily used. And that's when I get most mad. Not the fact that it's used in general. This is a time when it's used perfectly.
Yes, absolutely.
It's used well in how it's used in space, in the combat, in, you know, these battles. It was used very wisely. And I feel like the animation was really good. It was appeasing to the viewer, to most viewers, different from the original, but still appeasing. I found our 2 main characters, we were talking the other day about how they were well-written characters and well-developed characters to the point where sometimes anime, or any story, not even just anime, have somebody written that you hate. And you're like, well, obviously I want them to win. The people that are better than that asshole. But in this situation, you have 2 people in charge of 2 different armies. And you're like, I see both sides. Why can't they both win? It's like, I see both of their perspectives. They both have viable points. They both have valid ideologies. And you're like, but... and it's just like, well, I side with this person. And, you know, I like this facet of their personality. Like, I love all of these things. I love that you can understand, like, Jeff's poli-sci, and his major, and mine is history. So it's perfect for us. It might not be everyone's pick, but at the same token, we tried to look at these all objectively, and then after objectively, we looked at subjective. This was something that made sense. This was something that, when you looked at it through history repeating itself, was very viable.
Yes, absolutely. I loved the fact that they didn't go like, it isn't super action packed when it doesn't have to be. It's not. This isn't, you know, it's, you know, Space Battle the anime. This is about
Space Battle
the anime. No, it is about, like, the philosophies of war. It is about what makes a war something that is legitimate and viable versus something that is essentially a crime. It has a really, really interesting commentary on, if you are, even if it's maybe not out of your personal choice, if you are involved in a war, what responsibilities you have in that. Because, you know,
it's not just about you anymore.
Yeah, and one of the characters ends up kind of being guilted into continuing on with something that he's like, I don't believe this is the right course of action. And a superior officer was just like, we just follow orders. It's like, yes, you could quit right now. Somebody else who's not as good as you, who's going to screw it up way worse than you ever could, is going to have this mission go on.
Yeah.
And then potentially millions of people will die.
And then
It's
morally, you're like, well, I can't back out then.
Yeah, and so just
well,
having those discussions and having that be a lot of the focal point
Yeah.
of the anime is really strong, and it's very different than what we
Yeah.
normally get from anime,
Yeah.
because a lot of that decision making in other anime would be done behind the scenes.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be part of the narrative. It would just be like,
well,
oh,
obviously you'll do that.
yeah,
Why
we
don't
heard
they
about
do
blank.
that?
Yeah, you have to go do blank.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you see all the action involved. Whereas this is more like, let's discuss how these decisions are actually being made.
Yeah.
And then, like, and as you said, on the other side of the war, even though one side is definitely being painted as the one that's a little bit more
Germany.
Yeah. Like, but then as well, you have the one side who, historically speaking, you know, they were the aggressors, let's say.
Yeah.
And then you got the people who are being defenders. And then the decision making from the defenders, you can see, like, it's corrupt. People are making power plays, which happen in real life, which is historically accurate.
Yeah.
You know, even in a democracy, these sorts of things happen where
Yeah.
people abuse the system and take a leap at power.
Yeah.
And then they will try to villainize other people who just legitimately are like, I don't think this is a good idea. And they're supposed to be speaking democratically,
Yeah.
but then you just look at what's happening in the United States right now. Like, democracy is being villainized and weaponized.
That's like, I love one of the parts in the episode where it makes it very clear to the audience where Yang is in the library reading, and he reads a lot. And one of the girls is like, why do you read so much? You should be looking at combat and stuff. He's like, I read history because it repeats itself. No one else seems to, like, take that into consideration.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, that's why I'm good at what I do, because it repeats itself. This happens a lot. These strategies are used a lot. The same outcomes happen a lot, you know?
Yeah,
I
and
love
then
that.
The fact that both our antagonist and our protagonist and our antagonist, if you want to call them that,
Yes,
are
yes.
both strategic, like, geniuses. And so they have to start planning to do something that's, like, counter to what a genius would do, because they're planning against each other
Yeah.
and they know the other is really smart.
Yeah.
So they're like,
Once
well,
they
this
get
is what
acquainted,
yeah,
they're
once-
like, okay, this is what
yeah.
they'll do, so we have to think 3 steps ahead of that. So it's like, if I do this, then they'll do this. Maybe they won't suspect, then I will do this.
It's very, in a lot of ways, it's very Death Note-y. Death Note had a lot of
little
that
bit.
too, where you had these two genius level intellects that are constantly trying to
At
play
wits,
off of
yeah.
each other and whatnot, and so they're making plans like 6 months ahead, and they're like, well, we could pretend to make this mistake,
Yeah.
but really it's all part of the plan. And but what if they see through that and they just continue to do what they were going to do instead of reacting?
They're like, well, we'll just have to go with it, you know?
Mhm.
It's
It's wonderful.
yeah,
It's
so like our kind of, can I say the one that's more so you're supposed to lean into Yang, and then the other part is Reinhardt. So it's kind of 2 different ideologies, 2 different armies, 2 different concepts of what they're hoping to achieve.
Yeah,
And
and like the goals of Reinhardt as well, despite the fact he's the antagonist, like, you understand him. You're like, wow,
Yes.
I actually really appreciate
that's
what
when they
you're
give his
trying to
backstory.
do.
I was like, well, shit.
At first you were kind of like, go Yang, boo Reinhardt,
Yeah.
and then you see the context and you're like, no, I want them both to win, which
It's just
can't
like-
happen.
Yeah, it's just like one of them will win. I was like, obviously. But yeah, it's one of those things, and it makes it very clear, which I really appreciate, is that war isn't a short thing.
No.
It goes on. There's different strategies. I love that. I think you mentioned it just a few minutes ago, but very quickly, about how, like, there's also war crimes going on at the same time. It's like, well, let's take advantage of this by buying out this and selling it to these guys.
Yeah.
You know, it just makes it's what happens all the time. Things that aren't mentioned for war. Things that people don't take into consideration, which I love that they bring up. There's
You
so
know,
many
like
things.
how the United States sold to both sides in the Second World War until
well,
certain events happened.
let's not get into that.
No, it's in the history books. We know that it happened, and
Well, obviously
that
they were
sort
selling
of stuff
it.
happens. There are third parties that exist that make way more money if war continues on.
Mm-hmm.
So what are they going to do? They're going to push them at each other and be like, well, if we can just make them continue to fight, they have to buy resources from someone.
Yeah. And then the U.S. got involved after. Always late to the party. But anyways, not going to get involved in my history spiels. I'll go on for hours. But anyways, Legend of the Galactic Heroes was really good. I feel like people were too hard on it since it was a remake. But for what it was really good.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So let's go on to our next one. Number 9, Wotaku. And this was something I wasn't sure what to expect when we first heard about it. And now it has just kind of become this, I don't want to say phenomenon even, but it's become this thing that's more than what I expected, which makes me pleasantly surprised. It's very much a rom-com, very much about working otakus. And you have people that very much like us and our friends,
Yes.
where some of them do cosplays, some of them are very outspoken about being, nerdy, and some of them that are very terrified to tell people that they're nerdy. It's kind of like that. And, a bunch of us have been together for a long time. And we can totally relate. And, the gamer jokes they have in there, the romantic jokes they have in there, all hit. And it's very well animated. I'm very happy that, from rumors that I've heard, it's been confirmed, as far as I'm aware, that they're going to make a movie as well about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's very enjoyable.
Yeah.
Very sweet. And the intro is so bloody catchy. And it's like, I always say to Jeff, I was like, I hope to God somebody acts out the beginning there. Because I was like, it's just perfect choreography feel. But
I appreciate the fact that for our audience, I can't imagine any part of our audience wouldn't gravitate towards it in some respect, because the whole idea is about how there is no shame in being an otaku, or here, a weeb, or whatever you want to call it. There isn't any shame in that, and that society trying to shame anybody about it. Here's the thing. As much as people want to be like, well, that seems really nerdy, 6 of the top 10 grossing movies of the year were all comic book related. Comic books are nerdy. You like it. You're a nerd. Get over it. Being a nerd is perfectly fine. Of course, it takes a little bit of a different connotation and context when you look at it in Japan, because in Japan, being an otaku is not something that's good. It is frowned upon. Societally speaking, that's not something you're supposed to be outwardly joyous about. Mm-hmm. And so seeing these relationship dynamics between people who are openly just kind of like, they bring their Switch to work and they play, during their 15-minute break, versus ones who are like, they're not supposed to do that. Like, I don't want people to know that I'm dating this super otaku nerd boy. Yeah. But even in that, that character is still endearing in a way, and her growth is enjoyable throughout the series.
Yeah, she's very insecure.
Yes.
But then you have the other couple, or your secondary couple, who's very, they get in spats a lot. They love each other very much, but they just argue about a lot of things. They're very passionate.
For, one loves Dragon Quest, the other loves Final Fantasy.
She's very much into cosplay, and he just wants nothing to do with it.
But she's very much into yaoi as well, and he's like, no. And then she's like, well, I match up you two all the time in my mind. And he's like, no, don't do that. Why would you do that?
Yeah, she's like, you're definitely a bottom. It's like, what? No, don't say that to people. It's like, I can totally understand, because one of my gal pals is exactly like that. So I completely understand. So it's a very relatable, very sweet, very just fun. Mm-hmm. And there's lots of, video game jokes in general, where like the Pokemon one, where it's like there's this point in conversation where it's like, tried to make a joke, failed, can't escape, tried to escape, sort of thing. It just lands. It's funny. And I love that each year we seem to have one. Like last year was Recovery of an MMO Junkie. This year is Wotaku, and I like having one at least for a year. That's a really great rom-com. Yeah. Because I feel like they are so rare to get good ones. I'm not saying any, good ones.
And the problem I find a lot of the time as well is that the rom-com genre then sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes does end up incorporating some like harem-style stuff, which I'm not as big a fan of. Yeah. There is some comedy to be had there, right? Certainly, and I have liked my fair share of them that have those sorts of elements. Like My Goddess I'm pretty sure has kind of like a harem-y
I honestly
sort of
haven't
thing
watched it, but
going on.
I know
there.
what you're talking about.
Yeah, and so there's a place for it, but this is endearing and sweet and funny, and it just kind of speaks to the audience that watches anime.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people who are fans of anime now, people who are, it can also be younger too. I know a lot of fans that are younger who I've spoken to at conventions or so forth. But there are a lot of people like us who are working adults who, when they come home, watch anime, play video games. That's us.
Yeah.
And so it's nice to see yourself portrayed in an anime, whether it be, something more funny, more lovey-dovey, you name it. It's just sweet.
And I also love the fact that, like, none of our characters are portrayed as, like, losers.
No.
There isn't, like,
And
this
that's what I
character
like.
who's like, oh, he's a loser, but, like, a bunch of girls just glom onto him or something like that. Like, no. They're working people. They are respectable human beings. They are adding to society.
Yeah.
That's what they like to do on their off time.
They're good at what they do, They're taken seriously. It's not like, oh, they're ignored and, oh, God, they don't bathe or, oh, all that stupid, stereotypes.
They're good-looking people.
Oh, they are.
Yeah.
That's oh, gosh, now I'm blanking on her name. The second girl who has green hair.
The one who likes to cosplay.
Yeah, the one who likes to cosplay.
She is...
Now my hair blanks. My brain blanked. Holy crap, I can't talk tonight.
Gorgeous. But she also likes to cosplay sometimes as male characters. And that's what people like to do sometimes. And then she likes to dress up her boyfriend as a girl. Got to do it once.
Got to do it once. Yeah. Hanako, that's it.
Yeah.
And she's very much up my alley, to being like a dark sense of humor, to kind of pushing the envelope a little bit, to kind of making people uncomfortable in a funny way, you know what I mean?
She's very fiery, and she has a boyfriend who is also very fiery.
That's very much me.
Yeah, and they don't back down, but then you can tell, like, when they hurt each other's feelings.
They're like, oh my God,
like
I hurt his feelings, I'm so sorry. And then it's just like so out of her character, and she's like, I don't like being like seen as like weak or vulnerable or nice. Like this is like, I am who I am sort of thing.
It's very good. And if you had any inkling into liking a good rom-com, this is, I think, the only one we've got on the list this year.
Yeah.
And it's very good.
Yeah, like I said, you get the odd rom-com from time to time, but I mean ones that are actually good. Yeah. Not just like a throwaway or a harem or fan service or whatever. Something that's legitimately good.
Yes.
So, that's what we got. On to the next one. Number 8, Golden Kamuy. I feel like it really picked up from the first season. I felt like it kind of understood what it did wrong and strayed away from it. And that's good. They didn't do... I don't remember really any CG in the second season. They tried to stay away as much from that. They tried to keep a constant pace. They tried to develop and flesh out some of their characters and have more of the story be prevalent rather than it be, kind of all over the place. And that's fine, because we see that in Baccano, but for a lot of people it's hard to focus and keep track of characters. And they kind of brought a lot of them together to work out. Yeah. And so I found that even, like, one of the characters I ended up liking, which I didn't expect, was Ogata. His story I really liked. And along with a lot of other characters that are explored, like, they're really good, and I'm glad we got that. Even if, in the long haul, their backstory doesn't matter. It matters to people like me because it builds on this world and has stakes, being like, okay, now I care about what happens to them. It's not just like, here's this throwaway character we've had for a while now. Like, this is somebody that we're exploring, has feelings, has thoughts, has purpose, has all these things. And as usual, it's been great. Voiceover has been great. We watched the sub, not the dub. So I watched a couple dubs. I still feel like the sub is superior. Yeah, the action scenes have been really good. I can't think of anything horribly that that it did wrong the second season versus the first. I would just say the reason why it's ranked lower on my list, and Jeff can say his piece here, I find that sometimes they use humor at inappropriate moments, or else times it just doesn't land. And I'm like, I just wish you would have kept this whole episode serious if we're gonna do that. You know what I mean? That was for me, especially like sometimes they change the animation style, sometimes they change the faces to be more kind of, I don't want to use the word derpy, but a little bit. And stuff like that. That's kind of what the part that kind of brought it down for me, because it wasn't consistent. and having that tone. I feel like that humor kind of threw the tone a bit. And I feel like, I haven't read the manga, but I feel like some of the mergings of characters, I'm trying not to give anything away because some of you might not have watched it yet. Some of the merging of characters was unexpected, especially since the first season they made it so clear that they wanted to be separate. But that's something else I'd talk about when you've watched it. This is going to remain spoiler free.
Yes.
So, yeah. And I'll let Jeff talk here.
I think what it is, this is going for a very Quentin Tarantino style of anime.
Right.
In the sense of, we've got a lot of characters, a lot of narratives that are all interweaving with each other.
Mm-hmm.
We have this blend of like intense violence and seriousness mixed with some comedy, some levity to kind of bring to make it not so dread and terror and like.
And some of the comedy is fine having that in a serious thing, but the comedy doesn't always land. It's just kind of awkward.
There's a reason why not a lot of other directors that have ever been able to do the Quentin Tarantino style. Yeah. It's very difficult. You have to have a very particular sense of how this all interplays.
Yeah.
You could have had 100 different directors try to do something like Pulp Fiction. 97% of them
would have failed. Yeah.
Like, you would have had Quentin Tarantino and a couple of other guys or girls, a couple of other people who would have been able to pull off what is celebrated as one of the best films of the past 30 years.
Right.
So that's the thing where when Golden Kamuy is firing on all cylinders, it is to that level. It is to a Quentin Tarantino style of showcase.
Right.
But those misses then are just amplified. So there are times
I'll use the naked scene, you'll know what I mean, not let's call it the otter scene. Let's call it that. And you'll know exactly what I mean. It's just weird, it's disjointed, especially from where it was to where it was going. It's just an odd connector. I don't mean the secondary naked scene. This is going to sound funny, but there are two. But anyways, the otter scene really threw me and made me kind of frustrated. But yeah.
I felt like the first few episodes of season 2 just went way off the deep end in terms of, you got a bunch of crazy people who are in this world who are attracted to war, and these characters are, some of them just plain flat out nuts.
Yeah.
But the one character that they bring in who is very important into what's going to be happening in the future is absolutely batshit insane. And not like in a way that where you feel like bad for them or you understand where they're coming from or anything like that. It is just to a level that is uncomfortable. It's not funny. You kind of feel almost like upset that they're there, and it's just like, this, it isn't funny. I get what they're adding in terms of like narrative and what this is adding to the complexity it's adding, but like, you could have done it without this character being absolutely insane, wholly unlikable, having no redeeming qualities.
I can say the part that threw Jeff off the most, which will give nothing away, is the taxidermist.
Yes.
Let's say that. That really threw him, and it threw me too, because I thought, what the fuck's happening now? Because they're really going off the deep end.
But then it seems almost like they realize their mistake very quickly.
Yeah, and they're like, let's fix this. Yeah.
Let's pull back a little bit. So it's in the top 10. It is excellent when everything is working really well for it.
Yeah.
It's just on a list of things where there's very few, if any, problems with it.
Right.
If you got some problems, you're going to drop down on the list.
That's the thing. We talked about these lots. We're like, okay, this is what I see. These are what its problems are. What do you think about the one next to it? So we did think about this, and comparatively, it just couldn't beat the one above it, which we'll talk about next. So the next one is number 7, Banana Fish. It was really good, and I'd hoped, I gave it an 8. I wished it would have reached, it was at a 9 for a while, but then I felt like with Banana Fish, I was kind of let me back up. So I watched its entirety, obviously, and at the end I felt weird because I felt like there, especially the last episode, there was continuity errors. There were things that, at times the pacing felt really good, then it was off, and then things just didn't jive. And I was looking into the fact and talking to some people that read the manga, and then you find out things are missing from the story that should have been added, which I feel like left me. That's why I felt like there was a bit of a hole in me. I'm kind of frustrated by the ending. I'm okay with not necessarily having a happy ending, but the way in which it was done made me perturbed. But anyways, it's good qualities. It is very much the 80s aesthetic. It is very good in that sense. The voice acting is very good. The intros are really good. Yeah. And I find that our characters are very believable and honest and well written. And I feel like it never took its foot off the gas in the sense of shit happening. I felt like there's always something, but at times it felt a little repetitious because things happened more than once for certain events. Can I say that? Mm-hmm. But in the end, yeah, I felt, because I really like the character. Oh, shit, I shouldn't say that. I was about to say I like this character, but you haven't met them yet, so I don't want to say anything. Let's say somebody who looked after Ash comes into the picture, and I really liked his character, and I wish they would have done a bit more with him and things like that. So, basically my main problems are near the end continuity and pacing. Those are my main problems.
I think the issue that I had, and this is more about the genre that it's in than anything else, is that I never really got attached to any character because I'm like, this is a gangster show, a whole bunch of them are going to die.
Yeah.
And I knew that going in.
But that's not the fault of the anime. That's just the trope.
Yeah, that's the trope.
Yeah.
And they didn't do anything at all to, like, assuage my fear that that's exactly what was going to happen. Mm-hmm. Is that they're going to introduce characters, they're going to show how important they were to this, to the lives of all these people, and then that's when they give you the gut punch and, they die. And it's like...
and they're dead.
And I get that's what the genre is all about. But then to me, what is
I like
happening,
the feeling that nobody's safe, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but at some point, though, then it just kind of like, when so many things are happening and so many people are, put into danger and die and all this sort of stuff, you're just kind of like, well, I mean, why... I knew that a whole bunch of them are going to die. Why do I care? And that's the feeling that I got sometimes.
But that's your own feeling.
Yeah.
Again.
But they then didn't do a good enough job of investing me in those characters. Don't get me wrong. I was always invested in Ash. And Aiji as characters.
Yeah.
I've always,
those are our two main characters.
Be invested in them. Everybody else, I didn't really care.
Just with pacing, I wish they would have used their time more wisely. Instead of focusing on certain things, they would have been like, okay, to really develop this story, we should focus on these people more. Instead of being like, okay, this is done, now let's go on to this point, and this point, and this point. You know what I mean? It's like...
and then the other issue, I guess, that I have with it is that they just added a little bit too many parties into it all. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, you've got, this... different gangs that are part of this gang family. It's like, okay, that makes sense. And then, oh, by the way, there are government agencies who've gotten involved. Okay, cool.
And there's characters they made to be seemingly like big players, but then they did not much with them, which was disappointing.
And then it's like, oh, the gangs both have control over the government and then don't have control over the government. It kind of switches depending on what they need to have happen in that narrative to give you that gut punch.
It just reminds me of a Family Guy. I was like, double cross, crisscross. Yes. It's a lot of things going on, and at certain points it just feels like too much. At certain points, it does know how to hit the brakes and be using that humor wisely. Where I feel like Golden Kamuy could have learned from that, where the humor does land and it is appropriate. But at the same token, the pacing that happens after it was a problem.
And then, if you're going for a gangster show, you just have to know...
Again, it's not gangsters.
No. Well...
It's a gang.
Yes. Mafia-related, that sort of thing.
Not mafia-related. I'm very specific on this because
not the Italian mafia.
I used to write a lot of papers about this. So I was like, don't use words that don't
gangs and talking about control for a city.
Yes.
If you're going to use that trope, you have to know that some of the greatest works of fiction have been done in this sort of avenue. And so you are, as unfair as that is, you are going to be compared to that sort of stuff. You're going to be compared to The Departed. You're going to be compared to The Godfather.
That's fine. There's nothing that was wrong with it story-wise in the sense of what it hoped to accomplish.
It
It's
just
the
doesn't
fact that it
compare
doesn't
to
do
those.
it. Well, obviously, you're dealing with something that has a ton of money and production and hours and days and whatever. You're dealing with something that has, 24 episodes?
That's more time investment than The Godfather had.
Not money.
No.
And
not
it's
money.
also wasn't. I don't know if it was based on a book. Was it?
I don't know about The Godfather for sure.
I don't know. I've only watched the movies. I know nothing else about it. And then what's her face? The girl who screwed things up.
Sophia
But
Coppola.
that's about all I know about Godfather.
I'm just saying is that when you go into a genre that is very heavy with some of the
I'm just
greatest works of
saying,
fiction.
what it planned to do wasn't bad. Its idea wasn't bad. Its execution, I feel, was bad. I feel like it had a goal. It was getting there, and then it kind of just
tripped over the finishing line.
tripped a little, yeah. It wasn't bad, though. It wasn't perfect. It was good.
Yeah, and that's the reason why. Like, we're crapping on it a lot for
we're trying to tell you that, like, we're looking at it critically. Like, overall, it's number 7, so it did well. It wasn't something that was bad. It was something that kept me hooked every single week, and I watched it continuously. Jeff dropped out because, like he said, he's not into that kind of trope or kind of theme, but I am, so that kept me going. And it wasn't ever where I was like, oh, this is so bad, I'm stopping. It was all good. It's just the fact that at some points I had to think about it and be like, okay, why did they do this again? Why did they do this? They could have done it by doing this, and blah, 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 blah.
And then when you hear in the manga, they kind of did do that stuff. You're
yeah,
like,
it's like, well, then why wouldn't they add that? Like, it just pissed me off, but whatever. Anywho, it was good. We're just trying to show you that even though we love some of those things on here, we can crap on it.
Yeah, there's a reason why it's an 8 instead of a 10.
Yes.
Like,
so let's head on to the next one. Number 6 is Devilman Crybaby. It was something that I watched first. I was really into it, and then I got Jeff and every other person basically we knew to watch. It had the most bitchin' soundtrack. I listened to it constantly, all day, all night. He is aware of it.
I 100% agree with you.
I never watched the original Devilman, so this is based solely on what we watched. I'll say the problems of why Devilman wasn't higher is that some of the voice acting wasn't done properly. Can I say that?
For the dub.
I've listened to some of the Japanese too, and it's off in certain spots too. But overall, something just didn't sound right with some of the voice acting. I'll speak specifically to the dub because that's what I watched all of it on. And I feel like, especially with Miki's dad and sometimes with Akira, some of the voice acting and other characters as well, it's just off pace. Like they're trying to sync up the voices with the movement of their lips, but at times it was just odd. I'd say those are the two most where you see that happen from time to time. The other thing is at times, which is fine, we're dealing with a very minimalistic animation style, but I find at times that even some of the art became messy. And I know some people see that as an art style, but it wasn't consistent, so I'm just going to call it a messy part.
Yeah.
So minimalism was the art style, and at times it got messy, which I felt like took away from it at times. I understand why it was minimalistic, because there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
As even I said to Jeff, like when I was watching it ahead of him, I watched the first episode, I was like, there is sex, there's drugs, there's murder, there is everything. I don't know if it keeps getting worse, I don't know if I'll keep watching, because this is already a lot. And I was like, I don't know what the point of it is yet. And so
then you get it.
Yeah. And then as I kept watching, I was like, holy crap, there's a lot of biblical symbolism. Holy crap, there's a lot of like X, Y, and Z. And it's so good. Like, I feel It was something where it was just a ride, and the soundtrack helped with that ride. It was something that you kept wanting to watch. Even one of my guy friends, I was like, watch the first few episodes. He was like, man, I can't wait to watch more. And I was like, the soundtrack just takes you. It's like, yeah, you were already invested, but that was like, yeah, fuck yeah. It's like trance, techno sort of beats over a lot of the soundtrack. And it just sounds really cool. And then a lot of like, we're very aware of like biblical stories and ties and symbolism. So that was fun.
Yeah, the best thing that I can say is that if you are not wanting to jump into all the heavy stuff, it is still
It's a hard R.
Well, I meant more like it in the symbolism and whatnot. But yeah, of course. First of all, it's a hard R. Like, we talked about how that first episode of Goblin Slayer was exploitative in the way that it decided to utilize its its violence.
And I know somebody in the comment section was going to say that too, so I was like, I'm glad you brought it up, because I'd be like, well, that had all these things and you said you hated it and you dropped it. But when you keep watching Devilman, you see why all of it is there. You understand that all of it has a purpose and a point.
That's where I was kind of going.
Yeah.
Was that's the point of Devilman Crybaby.
Yeah.
It's showing kind of what society is turning into.
Yeah.
And then
the urges of demons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the whole, like, the heaviness or whatnot of its symbolism. If you want to, you can watch every single episode with a fine-tooth comb and find all of that symbolism. And it gives you a different experience as opposed to, if you don't want any of that, this is still an excellent anime just to kind of sit there and watch and, like, just kind of get lost in this world. And most of the stuff that is going to be happening, if you know your biblical references and whatnot, you will understand what's happening.
Yeah.
And they paint you an exact picture. So
that was Jeff when we were watching, because I've watched it several times now. And I was like, every few days I was like to Jeff, I was like, should I do it? Should I make a video on symbolism, kind of like Katsu? No, that's too much. No, I'm not going to do it. I could, but no. I was like, I would go back and forth for days. I was like, should I? No, it's a lot.
But, yeah, and so if you're the kind of person who really likes to deep dive into symbolism and seeing what, like, every single nook and cranny of an episode gives you and shows you, like, gives you the path that this is going to take, this is perfect for you.
Yeah.
If you're not, and you just want to be in it for the ride, it ends up being a far more mysterious, like, really, like, surprising anime.
Yeah.
And so you get a different experience depending on what you're looking for.
Yeah, because
Jeff,
it was so funny, because even Jeff said to me, and I got to put on my teacher hat, which is funny, he's just like, the scene seems familiar to me. Why? And I'm like, well, it's because this was in the Bible. This is a story. Blah 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 blah.
And I'm not a biblical scholar in any way, shape, and form. So, like, I know in passing a lot of biblical stories, but I was like, this, it reminds me of something.
And I was like,
all this sort of stuff. Yeah, and so I mean, I echo your concerns with some of the animation style. I 100% appreciate the minimalism. I get why they did it. And that's fine. It just sometimes gets a little muddled. Sometimes and I really do get it. I want people to understand that I'm not asking that every combat scene be this great, like Naruto level, Dragon Ball Z level type stuff, because it isn't. Yeah. These are, horrifying creatures that are just trying to murder each other as fast as possible. Yeah. So,
and don't get us wrong, there's different fight scenes, and they're good. They're just different from what you'd expect from, like...
Holy moly is what ends up happening in that last
don't say anything. Don't say anything yet.
No, I'm just saying, you do get escalation.
Yeah, you definitely get escalation. Episode 9, as you saw on Twitter, killed me. I was ugly crying. And it's just like, I don't want to say anything because it'll spoil it for those, because I didn't know much going into it, and I purposefully did that. I didn't want to be spoiled. Other than the only thing that was shown to me was the whole running gif, and I thought that was hilarious. And I was like, I don't know the context of I don't know the context of that, so I was like, that's fine. But I went into it not knowing anything about the original either. I ended up watching parts of it after, and anyway, but episode 9 gutted me, and it got Jeff too. Not as bad as me. I was ugly crying.
No. Because I mean, I figured on what was
Yeah.
I kind of figured what was going to happen.
Yeah, but seeing it in motion killed me. I had inklings, but I was like, yeah.
And I do want to give 100% kudos to Netflix for just being like,
I'm glad.
We like, this is not going to be for everyone.
Yeah.
This is going to be for maybe 50% of our anime audience at best.
And I love it.
They were still like, yeah, go for it.
I love it because the last few years they've been making bold moves and being like, okay, this one. Same with Hisune Tomasa-tan. Not something people were crazy about, but they'd already kind of grabbed it when they're like, okay.
Yeah. Be the Beginning. That was an original Netflix as well.
That
was really good. So, you know what? Kudos to Netflix. I know one of the head guys at Crunchyroll is like, Netflix getting into anime is like the worst thing that's ever happened to anime. I'm like, yeah, of course you would say that, because
jelly.
Yeah, they're the ones who are grabbing Evangelion out of your greasy little fingers there. Hey.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
It makes me mad when they're so.
Just in case Crunchyroll ever happens to watch this, I never said shit. That was my husband.
I'm just saying, pony up the dough if it's that important. Where you're like, Netflix getting this is the worst thing to happen to anime.
You mean Netflix?
Yes, yeah. Netflix getting Evangelion.
I just have to laugh.
Was one of the worst things to happen to anime. That is what one of the CEOs of Crunchyroll said, and I'm like, you are purposefully trying to rile up your fan base. Like, then pony up the dough if it's that important. If it's the most important anime in the history of anime, spend more money.
It's just it's funny.
I applaud Netflix for having the courage and the bravado to be like, hey, this is Devilman Crybaby. The Devilman series is known as one of the most violent, one of the hardest to watch anime ever made. It's purposefully designed to be that way. Please make it and put it on Netflix for us. Please.
And I never read this article, so Jeff was just telling me about it, but I just find it funny. So I find a lot of people crapped on Netflix, and now that it's making good choices, it's like, well, if we did it, we could have done it too. It's like, but you didn't. It's like, it's fine. Just let Netflix have its day and be okay with it, you know? But anyways, never saw the article. Back on track. Devilman Crybaby, very good. Very intense, very heavy R.
We will appreciate if you know this is something you can't handle.
Yeah,
I get it.
Totally. It's not like the thing is with Goblin Slayer, I knew right away I didn't want to get into it, but for me it was the fact that it was exploitative rather than
pushing a point.
Right? A point, or the fact that it was imperative.
Yeah.
Whereas after I got past the first episode and started understanding where they were going, I understood why all these things needed to be done. Like with bringing up, Sabbath and sex and drugs and murder and all these things. It just all makes sense, especially if you know anything biblically. It just makes sense with the story they're trying to tell. And it's very, very, very well done. The soundtrack is just killing it. I love it. But anyways, let's move on. Number 5, Violet Evergarden. So this one got a lot of flack when it came out because it's like, oh my god, like the art style, rah, 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 rah. But I found they were saying, like, with oversaturation, with having kind of like the lens flare sort of thing at time to time. But overall, it's gorgeous.
It is I would probably say it is tied for the best looking anime on our top 10, I think.
Oh, I know what you're going to say. I was like looking at the list, I was like, what? I was like, okay.
That one.
That one, yeah. But anyways, it's beautiful, but a beautiful anime does not the top 10 make. It is also very sweet and endearing and sincere and made me cry several times.
Hey, it made me cry several times too.
The cabin scene kills me, guts me every time, and I've watched this many times. But initially when we first saw it, I find that its few weaknesses are the fact that when initially you start, if you haven't read the manga, we're like, what do you mean a doll? Is she really a doll? Is she not a person? What does that mean? Is she like, what's her deal? But after a few episodes, it's like, okay, like I had an inkling in the beginning she was human, but using improper words, you're like, so she's not a real person. She's a robot. She's a weapon. She's a,
And then them using the term doll, like 50s era, like, oh, she's a doll. Like, please use a different word, because you know what doll also means.
Yeah, exactly.
And you've got this person who has a mechanical arm, and who doesn't outwardly show emotion.
Yeah. Like, that's the thing. For the first episode, I was pretty confident she was human, but I was like, there's a few that I've been surprised. So I was like, I'll wait.
Yeah.
But, and the only other thing I was going to mention about it is just the fact that since it does have a running through narrative, it's pretty episodic. And some of the episodes aren't as well written as others, but for the majority are well written.
Yeah. I appreciate how, you know, it's telling a story of like right around the ends of a war, and so you see how warfare impacts everyone.
Yeah,
you've seen
it's
families.
Not just her.
Yeah, it's not just her. You've seen families torn apart. You've seen one of the stories involves a brother and sister, and one has become an alcoholic because like that's how he's learned to cope with what's going on. And we've got, you know, husbands and wives who, you know, one of them has died in the war and all this sort of stuff.
Let's not give too much away.
Well, I mean, these are things that have historically happened with war that you don't see a lot of. You don't see a lot of care taken to that.
Right.
A lot of anime is about the war itself.
It's kind of a known fact that there will be casualties, but you don't get to see the fallout of those casualties.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like people who are waiting for somebody who might or might not ever show up.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
And it is not afraid to gut punch you, to be emotional, to be like, this is the hardest thing that is ever going to happen in this person's life.
Yeah.
And you should feel the impact of that.
Yeah.
And because if you don't, what has this episode been about then?
Yeah.
You know?
Like that was one of them where it's like, I completely understand with like, not all of them are necessarily about war, but most of them kind of circulate around that idea about the fallout from war, but some are just, you know, people writing back and forth one another. And there are people that come to her and say, well, I want to write a letter. And it's like, I have this feeling in my chest, but I don't know how to put it into words. Mm-hmm. And that's very much an honest thought. Like how many times we've felt something where like, is this jealousy? Is this anger? Is this, you know, you're just searching yourself to find those words that somebody else has for you. And there's people like during this time, and something else that's not acknowledged a lot of people can't read. A lot of people can't write. Mm-hmm. So it makes sense to have these dolls helping them to figure things out and to say the things that need to be said. But I found it was a very delightful series.
Yeah, it's that there's a couple of little things that you can poke at here and there, an episode here and there that maybe isn't as strong as the other ones, but on the whole, it is thought-provoking, it is emotional, it stays with you after you watched it. I can almost guarantee you there will be episodes that you will rewatch. You might not rewatch the entire series, but you'll be like, I need a good cry right now. I'm going to watch episode, 8.
Yeah, it's like friends of ours. I was like, oh, you have to see this episode. And it's like, it'll still make sense. Trust me. It's like, yeah. And it's so... Even the OVA was really good.
Yes.
That was like, made me ugly crying. But it was really good. And I feel like not much more needs to be said. The soundtrack was beautiful. The voice acting was beautiful. Everything was beautiful. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The next one, number 4, is Karakuri Circus. And I feel like this has to be said, you should watch it. A lot of people just haven't even noticed it. It's really funny. But it's something that I had no idea about. Jeff and I were talking before the season started. He's like, I was doing some reading about this. It's a manga. You should look into this. And I said, okay. So I kind of skimmed through it, and I was like, I'm interested.
Yeah.
And we talked about it before. It's about, kind of robotics in the sense of using it in puppetry and having motion, and also about disease and things like that, and humor and circus performances. So if you're afraid of clowns, this isn't for you. Sorry.
Less clowns, I think more marionettes.
Yeah, puppets, marionettes.
You're like
some of them look like clowns.
You're like Markiplier, and you're like,
I don't like, man, I can't.
You probably won't like this show.
Yeah, so if you have any kind of fear against puppets, mannequins, clowns, circuses, things like that, kind of that, I don't want to use the word creepypasta, but like the things that a lot of people are terrified of, this probably wouldn't be for you. But it's such an interesting concept. The intro song and outro is beautiful. The animation is gorgeous, things that we'd seen in the past but haven't seen in a long time, in my opinion. The characters are all very likable, very interesting.
Within 4 episodes, one of the characters
became my top 10.
Yeah, has become a top 10 character in like
all
at
of
least
anime.
shonen.
Yeah,
but
I have it in all of anime.
History. Like it, they are so good.
They're so well developed. I can say its only downfall, without giving anything away, is that we are now at a point, we're halfway through. Again, this is like a Magus' Bride moment where we're banking on where it's been going so far. The only thing that we can say that it's been kind of a little weak is the fact that we didn't expect things like, can I say, past lives. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And reincarnation, so to speak.
A lot of like mysticism and magic, which seems like...
And a little bit of alchemy. We'll put it that way, because that is very true. But that's a part that's unexpected that's brought up later here. But, with all that said, it is done really well.
Yeah.
It is. It takes no punch. It literally lands every punch. If it wants to be serious, if it wants to be deadly, if it wants to be humorous, it nails all of them. It's made me cry at least twice.
And like
and
the battle scenes,
hard.
The battle scenes have been
are
fantastic.
Good.
They make great use of the fact that most of the battling tends to be with marionettes, and so we've had like super extravagant ones. We've had ones that are like, well, they're just a bunch of blades, and if you can control where they're going, like obviously they're going to be deadly.
Yeah.
And so you have this wonderful sort of mix of they're marionettes. You can literally do anything with them. There's one that's a tank.
Yeah, there's one that's a tank. You also have people fighting people fighting marionettes. You have all sorts of things. It's very much like jam-packed, interesting. I really, really recommend it. It's so good. It's such an interesting concept. It's very much like in Naruto when you see the puppets, but instead it's like a whole series of puppets. It's not just one character. People who control these puppets, people who have trained their entire life just doing puppets. It's really cool. There
haven't been... Part of the issue that I have sometimes with shonen, because I think it's fair to say that this is a shonen in a lot of ways, is we don't have characters who are overpowered. We don't have characters who are, All Might levels of just I'm so much better than everything and everyone else that's happening. Within this world, everybody has been fairly realistic. They have weaknesses, not just a physical weakness, but a weakness in character, a weakness in the kind of person that they are, which makes sense for them. And they're addressing that and trying to kind of grow. And so, all of these things happening that are great wouldn't amount to as much as being, in the top 5 without characters that you want to root for, that are complex, that are deep,
and
that are really, thoughtful.
Yeah, I like the character designs too. A lot of them are really well drawn, shapely, stylistically, hair choices, clothing choices, specifically to their character and their personality. I also really like a lot. I just like a lot of things about it. A lot of choices they make, artistically and so forth, musically. The only other thing I can mention that's a bit of a weakness, but again, it's kind of like a Golden Kamuy where we haven't gotten all the way through, so we don't know. Some of the characters we meet haven't been fleshed out. They're kind of just there. We know they're there. We know where they are, but we don't know if they're going to be used anymore. You know what I mean? Let's call it the hitman, and then the hit girl. So we know they have a place. We know they have a personality, but again, like Ogata and some of them from Golden Kamuy, we still haven't gotten their backstory fully. We've gotten some of it. We've gotten some of their reason for doing this, but we don't have it all.
Yeah, and I think it's 36 episodes, so they definitely have time.
Oh, they definitely have time because there's no way it's done this season. They have 36 episodes.
Yeah.
So yeah, they still have time.
They have a lot of time, and the pace has been really good.
Yeah, it's been very, very action-packed.
It's been action-packed. They've known when to hit the brakes and take a little bit of time to let the characters grow. And
that's the thing. Even when they cool off a bit during episodes, it's still constructive. We're learning things about these characters. We're meeting new people. There's a reason why we're in this place.
every episode has been worth watching.
Yeah.
Every episode has built on what has come before it.
Right.
And lots of times that just doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like, something that we're enjoying,
Mm-hmm.
but kind of has a flaw that this one doesn't. It's something like Radiant, where a lot of times it already felt like some of it was kind of fillerish, where you're
Mm-hmm.
like, I would kind of like them to just get to the point,
Yeah.
as opposed to, hey, here's some stuff that's happening because
Reasons.
It's like every episode of Karakuri Circus has been important.
Purpose, yeah. If you
has
miss
been
one
purposeful.
episode, you're like, why is this new character there? Why is this person fighting this person now? Like, there's a whole reason. There's a confrontation. There's backstory. There's thoughts. There's everything is explained.
Every minute has felt important. There hasn't
Yeah.
been a single point where I have been like, well, I don't get that. I don't get why they did that.
Yeah.
Again, it's not a 10, so it's not perfect.
No.
And definitely the recent 2-part episode, I was kind of like, if I had to watch, I'd have kind of been tapping it near the end,
Yeah.
where I'm like, okay, I see where you're going.
We saw where they're going, but it could have been done a little quicker, but that's a very, very minute complaint.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the difference between a 10 and a 9.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So, let's move on to the next one. Number 3 is Steins Gate Zero. I know a lot of people were kind of miffed about this season, but I don't know what to say.
I disagree.
Well, I mean, in the sense of, like, I don't know what people expected. Like, this is the darker timeline. This is the timeline that helps out our initial timeline. I'm going to say timeline like a million times. Like, all of it makes sense. Like, I was showing Jeff, like, my breakdown of how the whole season made sense. Because we were running through things together. And I was like, well, this happened before this and blah, 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 blah. But the only thing I can say badly about it is for some reason during the middle, some of the animation suffered. I'm not sure exactly what happened.
A little bit, yeah.
And then some of the characters that are new to this season, I felt like they could have explored further rather than just taking it at face value that that's what it was. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I wanted to know more about it. But otherwise, I knew this was going to be darker. I knew this wouldn't be positive. I knew roughly where it was going to go, which doesn't make it bad.
We already were told where it was going.
Yeah. If you've watched the first one, you know what has to happen in the second one, in my opinion. But
I guess the question for some people would be like, well, then what was the point? Where I'm one of those people that the journey is more important than the destination a lot of times.
yeah, that was my initial thing at first when I heard it was happening. I was like, but why? Like, and Jeff and I talked about this for a while, and it's like, it was good for what it was. It's just the fact that it was predictable because we knew where things were going. So that's why I struggled back and forth about where it should lie on this list. But when you're thinking about it, the voice acting was still really good. The information given was can I say satisfactory? The fact that I try to say things that don't give away, even though that to me make sense, but it was good. That's just
Well, I would go as far as to say that it was great. The thing that was most impactful to me was to see, and yes, like Sugar and I even talked about this, about the impact that being in the beta
loop,
timeline does, not just in the loop, but the impact of what being in the beta line means versus being in the alpha line does to Okabe, who is Okabe for 99% of Steins Gate Zero.
Right.
And how oddly, utterly depressing it is to just kind of see Okabe and what happens to everybody else around him. Like, when you watch the original, you know the impact of the events, what it had on him. You never saw as much on what happens to the rest of them because
as
the
you know
loop
from
is
watching,
something that is his own struggle.
That's the thing, there's Okabe, and then there's Kiyoma.
Yes.
So it's different to see how other people perceived what happened.
And not just that, but like how negatively everybody's lives were impacted. Like the fact that, and you get that idea in the first. You get that in Steins Gate. Steins Gate is a 10 to me. I felt like it was brilliant. And
I feel like, well, we've talked about the first 3 episodes, but yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's brilliant. But the one thing that I feel like it never really did was hammer home how important Okabe was to everybody else's life. To the fact that the kind of person that he is impacts everybody around them way more than, like, you know, everybody has an impact on each other sort of thing.
And that's the thing we talked about, because I said to Jeff, but I'm also one of those people that Jeff's like, well, because you think that way, not everyone else does. Where it's like, I was like, well, I understood that because it was established in the first one how much he meant to everybody. But he was like, well, I wanted to see that, though, you know, rather than just take it for granted. And I'm like, well, it wasn't necessary, but I understood now.
I mean, it's...
why you enjoyed it so much.
Yeah, that was important. That was one of the things that I needed Steins Gate Zero to do in order to be successful. And I feel like they did it exceptionally well. Yes, it made me sad. It made me sad to see what these people became, what became of the world in the beta timeline. But even knowing how bad it was, that it still made me sad, that's a hell of a thing to be able to do. And there is something to be said for an anime making you feel maudlin, making you feel kind of downtrodden. Not every anime is going to make you feel fantastic at the end.
Oh, no, I'm fine with anime that don't ever intend to make you happy. I've run into a lot of those. But it was always the thing when I heard it was happening. I was like, but why? That was my only thing. And it's still to this point, I really enjoyed the season and it was done rather well. It was just the fact that was always in my mind was why? Why do I have to see him suffer more? Why do I have to?
Do we have to get down to the brass tacks of they knew it would make money? Like,
well, of course.
Artistically speaking, obviously you could have done any sort of thing with Steins Gate. This was the kind of the next logical step.
Well, the next logical step would have been something that happens after the fact. Like, we had the OVA, we had the whatever. But anyways, I'm not going to get into it. I felt like this was kind of... it's hard to compare it to something, but I just felt like, again, this might just be me, the obvious that was going to happen. Yeah. Other than obviously the small, the short girl, obviously older, was the one that was the difference versus the first one.
And she was wonderful.
Yeah,
she was a wonderful
for one of
addition.
our mains, and kind of laid into that whole you'll understand it if you see it sort of thing of Mozart and Salieri, which was an interesting idea. But at the same token, it was one of those things where I appreciate what it did. Even though initially I was always like, why?
And the other thing that I would say that kind of, again, there's a reason why, you know, for me it was a 9 instead of a 10. Knowing who your villain is going to be immediately, as soon as they entered the picture.
That frustrated me.
We're like, well, yeah.
I was like, everything based on anything I've learned.
It was so obvious that I was convinced it was a red herring.
Yeah, I was like, it's not.
It has to be, because, like, this is so obvious. And then it just is like, oh.
Well, obviously it's obvious.
Okay. I was maybe I was just kind of hopeful that it was a red herring.
I knew right away. I was like, you're like, I hope it's not. I was like, oh, it is. I was like, the way they're writing this, they're totally.
But then, like, the fact that it was still as great to me as it was, despite knowing the ending. Knowing who the villain was going to be.
That's why I give it props. It was good for what it was, even though I didn't feel it was necessary, and the fact that I knew who the villain was.
Yeah.
Knowing who the villain is doesn't change anything, so to speak, because, well, I'm not going to get into that. But anyways, it doesn't change the outcome because you know what the outcome is going to be.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing was, for me, the journey is more important than the final destination. I knew... If I know that I'm eventually going to get to a great rib joint, like...
But to me, it's just like, I felt almost like I was one of the secondary characters. So I'm like, why? Why does Okabe have to suffer? Why do I have to watch him suffer more? I was like, just let Okabe live. Let him live in his own world where everything's perfect now. I was like, but that's just me.
It was... Hey,
leave Okabe alone.
We love Okabe, and that's the reason why it's so powerful to see a character that you love in, like, You just want to enter the show and give him a huge hug and be like, dude, I get it. I understand.
Well, you can't say you get
sorry."
it because we don't have to keep doing the loop.
No.
But anyways, it was good. We'll put it that way. So if you like the first season, the second season's good as well. It's just the fact that it'll obviously be more depressing.
And the one thing I will say, there was almost no way in which this could ever have reached Steins Gate. Like, you can't.
That was
I feel bad for people who watched it and were like, well, it wasn't as good as Steins Gate. So
well,
what's
of
the
course
point?
it couldn't be.
There's
a chance it could have been, but it's hard to make those leaps.
Like, Steins Gate is one of the most
that'd be like anything,
the highest rated anime of the past 10 years.
Yeah, but I'm saying that's with anything that's high. It's like if they said all of a sudden, like, oh, from Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, we're gonna add another season, and everyone would be like breathing in heavily, like.
See, now I feel Hunter x Hunter could get away with it. And
well, it's because there's lots of things that have been left unfinished. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, Steins Gate has a lot of games and light novels.
I don't know much, honestly, about the games. I've heard bits and pieces about stuff, but I purposefully kind of closed myself off from it if anything more happens. It's the same with Zero. I didn't want to know anything.
I think what maybe was the disconnect with some people is Steins Gate Zero feels very much like it was made almost for those who are already in the know with the games and the light novels and the expanded universe as it was.
Well, I think...
Whereas the original Steins Gate was made assuming you knew none of that.
I think a lot of people were angry about it was because, well, obviously it wasn't as good as the first season, but then the fact that I think somehow in their hearts, because due to the trailers and advertising that Kurisu was there, that they'd get that dynamic again, and we don't really... I'm going to say it like that, but...
But then you get to see what the absence of Kurisu is like. And
I know, but nobody liked that.
that was so impacting and affecting on me. Like, that was really important to me.
No, I know, but I'm saying most fans didn't want that.
Well, I mean, yes, it was depressing to see Okabe not have, essentially, the love of his life involved in his life. Yes, that is sad. You know what?
Sad things are sad.
In the Notebook, she's without the love of her life for a little while, too. Like, that happens, and that was sad, too. But
how does it go in Bob's Burgers? All bad things are bad. But hey,
yeah,
it was good. It's just when things are meant to be depressing, it's going to be depressing.
There's not a lot of, like,
it's like, silver lining. It's like silver lining is
Devilman Crybaby. Not a lot of happy moments.
No, I can guarantee that. No. But anyways, let's move on. So number 2, second year in a row, My Hero Academia Season 3. So I feel like, again, same as last year, it's consistent animation, consistent action. Its whole arc, which I've been waiting for all of you to see, which I was so happy about, was the entire arc with All for One and One for All. Which was amazing and well animated, really great soundtrack, both Japanese and English, had different kind of views on that event. It was really good.
Yeah, the voice acting for All for One was like in
different tone,
In the Japanese, he is very like just kind of like it's like a calm sort of like. Not necessarily like a standard villain, but done excellent.
Yeah.
And then
so both versions are very well done.
And then the English, he's very like calm to the point where it's
disturbing.
Unsettling. Where you're like, you are literally fighting the strongest person in existence, and you are not just calm, but you're like welcoming it.
Yeah.
It's creepy. It's unsettling.
Yeah.
Whereas in the Japanese, it was almost like he knew that he had already accomplished something, so he was very, not necessarily like super boastful, but more like, I've already won all of this, and you don't even know it yet.
Yeah.
It's funny to watch you try.
Yeah. So it was interesting seeing that kind of different takes on All for One, but it was very good both ways. We watched both of it. Both of them.
Seeing everybody else get bodied or almost
just
themselves,
yeah.
like, nobody, not
It
even
totally
not even
reminded-
Stain had that sort of
Yeah.
reaction from people where it's like, I'm going to puke. I'm just in his presence, and
well,
I'm going to throw
we
up.
did kind of see that with Stain, where people were paralyzed.
Where it
We
was
saw
like-
that, yeah.
Yeah, but it was like.
But it
almost,
wasn't like a puke, no.
No, this was like with Stain. It was almost
With
like
Stain, it was
you
like you
kind
could-
of. They were almost like in awe of his.
It's
of
because
his
he was so
determination.
driven, and the fact
Yeah.
that he had such clear perspectives and goals that people
all
understood this.
all for one. It was like.
It was like,
I am made sickened in their presence.
It's
This
like-
is beyond anything that. It's the polar opposite of All Might.
Yeah.
All Might, you feel like everything's going to be fine. Like, he is going to mop the floor.
Yeah.
Here it's like, I feel utter dismay.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing is going to be good ever again. I'm dead.
Well, it's like Jeff and I talk about all the time when you run into certain people where it's like they make you feel really uneasy.
Yes.
And other ones that make you feel really good, kind of like auras. That kind of reminded me of that. I love that how they portrayed that, just him being there. They didn't even have to see him, just being on the other side of the wall, becoming like physically ill. That's how like dark his aura is and his presence is, and it was really good. I loved all of that scene. I loved everything with All Might made me cry.
Yep.
And of course the moment with Endeavor made Jeff cry, which made everybody sad. But it was very good. I like how they introduced near the end, they kind of showed you where they're going with the next season, where they showed the top 3 in the school for a purpose. They have a big part in the next season.
Oh, my God.
And we kind of see who our villain is. I'm not going to say anything because I want you guys to be surprised, even though I've obviously read ahead. And I know what the next season's all going to be about. It's going to be great.
We know
and
what the
yes,
next, 2 seasons are going to be,
well,
basically.
a lot, yeah. And so I know people are upset because My Hero Academia was pushed seemingly to October.
Yeah.
But honestly, if that's the time it needs to be perfect again, to have everything kind of down pat, not be catching up too far where they have filler, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with it being as good as it can possibly be. So I'm okay with that completely.
We'll be happy with it being in the top 5 this time next year.
Who knows? Depending on next year's going to be heavy hitters though, so we'll see. We have Fruits Basket being redone. We have I used to love Fruits Basket, and I'm excited to see it redone. We have One Punch Man. We have Attack on Titan continuing. We have My Hero Academia. We have lots and lots of big hitters this year.
Neverland and Dr. Stone are starting
Yep,
up. And,
lots of things.
but
anyways,
I mean,
back on track.
if this continues, this is a 10 for the both of us.
What? Oh, this, yes.
Yeah, season 3
Yes.
and season 2,
It's a 10.
they were both 10s.
I can't think of anything critically where it was bad. The music was on point. The soundtrack was on point. The openers don't count as an anime as a whole. It doesn't count towards my 10s or 9s or whatever. It's just a comment I make.
That's a bad opener. 5 out of 10.
Fuck, I know. It's really great. Animation was really great. Story was consistent. There was one episode with the whole, I believe that was the pool scene.
Yeah.
Which, whatever. It wasn't that bad. And if that's like the worst we're going to get is one episode with a little kind of creative license, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Like, the only negative that most people can point to is that they're like, I don't think it was as good as season 2, which I'm like, okay.
Season 2 is a totally different tone, though.
Yeah.
Season 2 is all about understanding what your strengths and weaknesses are. It's working with people. It's having that tournament arc. It's understanding that you are your biggest obstacle, not the person in front of you.
Yeah,
Especially
and
with
Stain. Season 2 as well.
Stain was an amazing villain, which some people still don't understand. But I'm glad a lot of you have come around and you're like, I get it now. And I was like, yeah, baby.
Yeah.
But Stain was a great villain, and even if it was short-lived, his impact from now on is going to be deep.
It's forever. It changes the world.
Yeah, his message is a big deal. But I feel like the characters, we have more development. Even in the manga, we have more development, which I don't think anybody would suspect having this much development. That sounds kind of corny, but it feels like, once we have a little bit of development, we can put it on the side. But that's not how it is. It's this upcoming season, I know exactly who they're going to develop. And I'm going to be so happy because you'll get to see that, and that'll be fun.
The other thing that I will say is I get people who, at the end of season 2, they were like, there were certain people who were like, I don't like Bakugo. I don't like the kind of person he is.
I'm glad
I don't understand why he is the way he is.
And I said with a lot of you, I was like, wait till he gets his moment. You'll see. And a lot of you came after, and they're like, I get it now. I get it. With
and it's so like it's so much. It's so deep. It's so deeper. It is much more realistic and a much deeper sort of understanding of a character than something like. I love Naruto. But Sasuke sucks. I hate him. Nothing of what he does makes any sense. He is basically there to be an emo little jerk about things. And then even when he finds out about like how great Itachi was and amazing, he's just like, well, I'm just going to forget all of that. And I'm going to forget everything that he wanted to do, and I'm going to chart my own path because my brother said he believed in me right before he, flickered back out of existence. And I'm like, no, that doesn't make you a good character. That makes you a little emo mirror of Naruto instead of being a good character. Whereas Bakugo is a very deep, thoughtful, well-written character where you get why he's kind of an asshole. You understand it. You get that.
That's
in
why
season 3.
I shouldn't say it. Well, I'm gonna fucking. Somebody, a couple people, I'm not gonna say who, compared Bakugo to Naruto. They're like, it's exactly the same. It's like, it's not.
No.
not really close.
No, not at all. I wouldn't think so.
Yeah, it's like there's lots of things about Bakugo, and like they're very different characters, and I feel like now that he's gotten some more time, that you've seen it, those who haven't read the manga, I feel like people are better understanding who he is. That at the core, he's not a bad person. He's just, how can I say it in a nice way? He's just, in a lot of ways, been told how great he is and wanted to believe that, and had this belief that since it was said so much that it was true, that nobody could compete with him. And therefore, once he saw that other people, like especially at the academy, saw that they were way better than he was in a lot of ways, it's very humbling and brings us back to that moment where he's with Deku, and we really understand the fact that he really wants to be like All Might.
Yeah.
And the fact is that he did have dreams and he had ambitions, and he still has those things. He still wants to be the best. He doesn't want to be the villain, and I love that made that very clear with Eraserhead, where he's just like, if you think he's going to be the villain, you don't know him.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
If you think he's the one that you can turn, you have no idea the kind of character he is.
And I love that, and it kind of brought forth his mom, which people loved his mom for other reasons. Yeah. But his mom is very cute. I love her.
Like, season 2 gave us the character development of Todoroki, and that was needed. And it was that, like, his main thing for a long time was that he didn't want to be Endeavor. He didn't want to be the person that Endeavor wanted him to be.
Yeah, he didn't want to be just for the purpose of beating All Might.
Yeah, he didn't. That was his identity. It was like, I don't want to be what my Endeavor wants me to be. And his eventual growth out of that into like, I want to be the best hero that I can be. And that doesn't mean that I don't use my fire.
Yeah.
I'm using half of my power. Like, how does that make me a good hero? Yeah. Whereas Bakugo and Midoriya have this great sort of idea of seeing two different sides of All Might, because Bakugo's whole thing is like, All Might wins. Yeah. That's all he does. Yeah, he comes in, he wins. He beats the bad guys. Yeah. He makes everybody run and piss themselves because they don't want to touch him. Yeah. That's what he is. And that's what I have to be. Yeah. And then Midoriya knows the other side of All Might, where it's like, but it isn't just about you come in, you punch some guy, and you save the day. It's working within the system. It's working with the police officers. Yeah. It is, working with Endeavor, despite the fact Endeavor hating your guts and wanting nothing more than to be better than you. It's knowing that there's just like somebody like Sue is just as important as he is, because he's like, I can come in and I can punch a building, I can hold up a building, I can't save everybody all at once. I'm going to try my damnedest, but like that it just isn't possible.
Yeah.
You need to work within a system.
And I love
and
that
Midoriya gets that.
And I love that All Might even points it out. He's just like, they don't understand that they're each half of what they're whole. Like, they have something that each of them needs, and they'll be rivals forever because of it.
Yeah, they will make each other better.
Yeah, and they'll always be going together. And it just makes sense. And I love that sweet moment. It was in the manga, too, where, like, obviously they get in trouble for what they did. And they're in the house cleaning, and he's just like, you know, I can't word it properly, but it's basically along the lines. It's like, when you, like, leave yourself open like that, I can easily kick your ass. Like, stop doing that. And that's, like, his sincere way of trying to help him. Yeah. Understanding that, like, okay, All Might gave you this power, so I'm going to help you be better. Like, if you want to be like All Might, he's like, fucking act like it, sort of thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, don't let someone like me beat you, because I shouldn't be able to. And I am, like, and I love that moment where it's kind of a sincere thing of trying to help.
Yeah.
And that it's very sweet, and I love it. I love the whole thing.
Yeah, the only thing I feel in shonen that touches it up until the bad parts, Death Note, which if you want to count that as a shonen, right up until a certain thing happens, Death Note is to that level. Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood is to that level.
Excuse me,
and
God,
then
I can't get it.
I would argue, though I have been hypercritical of it, the Chimera Ant arc of Hunter x Hunter hits those levels.
Oh, Lord.
And that's it. I feel like those three. Now, I haven't watched every single shonen ever made or anything like that, but like when that is the level that you are hitting on a seasonal basis, you are doing an excellent job.
Once I read the manga, well, obviously I saw the first season first, then the manga, but I always had faith that he could pull it off. And when I saw his artwork, his vision, the people on his team, everything, I knew it would keep getting better. I always hoped it would keep getting better. I was like, okay, he knows. If you know anything about, you know, the manga, about the creator, you see that he is very much a fan first.
Yeah.
And so that's a big deal, and he understands our perspective. It's not like, I don't want to say like a lot of people, but like in a lot of situations, they're like, I'm just in it for money, you know, I just want to tell the story, I don't really give a shit. But, you know, he is very much a fan first, and he really wants it to, he thinks of himself like, if I was waiting, what would I want? If the next season was coming out, what would I expect? Well, like, it's the same way when he wrote his manga. Like, I love that he wrote his frustration where he's like, you know, there's always those blank pages in manga, and I always thought, like, it's such a waste not using them, so I started doodling the equipment that people were using and their abilities and things, like, about stuff that you wouldn't know in the manga, stuff that, like, interesting of how I came up with the ideas or what they do at home.
Like, I really liked drawing hands.
Yeah.
That's why he has hands.
That's one of my favorite things with, oh, God, I'm blanking on the name. On, begins with an S. Holy crap. The guy with hands. Here.
No, I'm blanking too.
Oh my God. Shigaraki.
There you go.
I was like, oh my God. I was like, begins with an X. Anyways, and he was just like, you know, when I was drawing that character, I was like, oh, this is great. I was like, I love drawing hands, so this is just neat. I love how he looks. And he's just like, oh, this is becoming an anime. He's like, oh, God, I have to animate him. This was a bit of a mistake. But he's just like, I still love it. I still, like, he just loves drawing hands. And it's just really funny where he's like, as soon as, like, once they said I have to animate it, I was like, this is going to be difficult. And it's just kind of a funny thing where he's just like, I just did it out of a love of doing it rather than it being like, oh, this is, it'll look great in anime. It's just like, I was just thinking how it would look good on a manga. Yeah. It's just funny.
So I can understand why some people thought.
Sorry, his name is Kohei Horikoshi, right? Did I say that right? Yeah. I love him.
Yeah,
great.
He's great.
Great.
So
right.
If he's saying, by the way, I need like another 9 months to make this as good as everybody is hoping for, then fine.
That's fine.
Take your 9 months.
I was like, if you need a year, that's fine.
I will appreciate and respect the opinion of those who said that season 3 ended, like, having what I felt was the high point of season 3 be in the middle was kind of weird.
I saw that coming, though, just with how they usually pace it. They have a specific kind of episode per chapter sort of thing. So I saw that coming.
Yeah, so I can see why people were like, Well, season 3 doesn't like end on
Yeah.
a super high note, even though I would argue Mirio is a
It's
high
it's
note,
a high note.
but it's not the same as
But that's the thing, they
All
don't
Might
know it
versus
yet.
the
That's the thing.
All Might versus All for One. Like that's
But
that's one of
that's
the
the
high
thing.
points of the series.
It's one thing I like to make clear to a lot of people too, is that you can't be on the gas the whole time.
Yeah.
You have to have kind of like this roller coaster of being cool, then action, then cool, then action, and creating this development. And that's where My Hero Academia has always been. It hasn't just always been on the gas. We've been finding these moments that are really sincere and sweet and honest. And I find that, like, if that's just where it naturally ends, that he was like, fine, let's end there.
Yeah.
Have, like, a trailer to kind of indicate this is going to be another big player. These are our new players. And they hint at other people. They didn't show them, which I thought was really cute. Oh, they're like, oh, we should tell, him about it. And I'm like, yeah, I know who him is. But you don't know, but it's still a big deal. And the next season, be prepared to cry, because I know I cried in the manga.
Season 4 will be excellent as well.
It'll be excellent. And seeing it
Narratively
animated, I'm
speaking.
so excited,
Yeah.
because the whole, like, alleyway scene, like, that was, I won't say anymore. It's good. I won't say who it's involved with. It's great. I'm so excited.
You get another secondary character from the Academy getting their time in the spotlight.
Yeah.
Which is like every season now we've kind of gotten
Some of our focus.
First season definitely was Midoriya.
Right.
And then second season we had Todoroki.
Todoroki.
Third we had Bakugo. Fourth, it's another character who gets a huge part. And
Well, I'd
it's
say probably
awesome.
about 3 get some decent. 1 major, 2 minor. Yeah.
Arguably, yeah. There's
We'll talk off the screen, but I know one for
there's
sure.
one where I'm like, oh my god, yes.
One is big. One is... We won't get into it, but there's a lot of people who get their time to shine. People you haven't met and people you have met. And that's all we'll say. Let's go on to number 1. So number 1 is A Place Further Than the Universe. I think all of you would expect that, but who knows? Some of you have told me that your number 1s have already been mentioned. Some that, you never know. So, A Place Further Than the Universe. Amazing animation, amazing story, amazing everything. There's nothing.
Amazing everything.
Basically,
Yeah.
soundtrack was great, opener was great, ending was great, sad. Not all of it's sad. Very much coming of age. That fucking bridge scene, that camera angle, was obviously it's not a camera angle because it's not real, but that
Cinematography.
that angle, that decisive use of motion, and it was just perfect. The colors are amazing. The fact that when it was coming up in the season, I was like, I like it's girls going to Antarctica and there's penguins. I was like, I don't need to know much more, but I'm okay with that. And then once we kind of got into the first few episodes, I was like, oh, there's actually substance here. It's not just a cutesy-wootsy crap. And no, seriously, because it's like, when you saw the opener and the trailer, it's like, oh, this girl just wants to go to Antarctica and there's penguins and they do shit and they're fooling around and you're like, girls being girls. But you see pretty quickly that it's serious, that there is a serious reason for wanting to go to Antarctica. There's
a level of realism to it that
a
nobody
level
was
of
expecting.
realism,
We're like,
a sense of understanding passion and being driven by others, and understanding that how those things can ignite in others. Where it's like, oh, I see how passionate they are. I want to go now. And then these other girls get involved because of other means, and you find out those things. And when they're on their journeys, things that happen, and you find out more about them and why some of them are why their personalities are shaped in such a way. How some of
they're very real characters.
They're real. They're very real.
And the thing is that you can. I felt like I connected with basically all of them, but every one of them, even if you don't connect with someone, you will connect with someone.
Yeah.
And they will be your bae for the series. And it is thought-provoking. It is powerful. It shows...
It will make you cry.
It shows, what is possible if you're just willing to really go for it.
Yeah.
Yes, is it a tiny bit far-fetched that this could ever happen? Of course it is.
Of course it is.
But the amount of realism and the respect that they bring to this idea is far greater than I was anticipating.
Yeah.
I was thinking at first, oh, they're going to win a trip or something, but no, they all have to earn their way on, show why they would be worth it to a research team who's like, no, we're not just going to take you to Antarctica.
Yeah. It's not that kind of anime.
We're researchers.
Yeah. We want a reason why you need to go. Yeah.
And then they find a way to make it work that makes sense, that is understandable,
that's
given
plausible.
their positions, and then they don't gloss over how difficult it is. They don't gloss over and
it's on a peaceful ride.
The factual information they give you and how. Like, this is what actually traveling to Antarctica is like.
And I love that
terrible.
It doesn't beat you over the head with things. Like, the whole walkie-talkie scene crushed me, because I know instantly what it meant. Even right now, it's like, try not to tear up. The walkie-talkie scene killed me.
Yeah. Oh, with me, it was the emails.
Obviously, it was the emails at the end. But, God, it was so good. It's so well written that you understood. It wasn't beating you over the head with, this is what that means. It was like, just letting it linger, and then the second it lingered, you're like, oh, fuck.
Yes.
And you're like, oh, no. But, like, it's very, like, there's so many great things about it. It's very much a coming of age. It's friendship. It's understanding others. It's putting yourself in someone else's shoes. Understanding that people haven't had a life of privilege, that you've had to work really hard, and that rumors are just bullshit, and that all of these things are based on,
And then, I guess... I'm not going to spoil anything.
Yeah, try not to spoil anything.
But just that the relationship between the main girl and her best friend.
Yeah.
And what happens there, like how real.
Yeah, it makes you mad, but you're like, I know that's happened.
Yeah,
like that's happened.
That has happened before.
Yeah.
People sometimes people are friends sometimes out of convenience. They're friends out of selfishness. People will, even if it's like subconsciously, some people will try to hold you back so that you don't leave them behind.
Yeah.
And this anime approaches it just in a very kind of no nonsense. It is like, this is what happens sometimes.
Yeah.
This is the way people are sometimes. And the scene in where all of that kind of comes to a head even.
Yeah.
That was really powerful and really well done.
Yeah.
And it felt just so... It was cathartic. It was. It just felt so...
Things that needed to be said that were left unsaid for so long.
Yeah.
And you felt that weight where it's like, this has had to happen for a while.
Yeah. And like, people who never knew what true friendship was.
Yeah.
And seeing what it actually meant.
Yeah.
And then being like, what? Like, this is what this is. No, of course. Like, what...
Yeah, what did you expect? And it's just like, well, when you're
and
treated badly for so long...
they tear up and they cry because they're like, I've never had real friends.
Yeah.
Like, I've had people who want me around for ulterior reasons.
Yeah.
I've had people who want me around because it makes them look good, or it helps them with their career aspirations, or I'm just there.
Let's not spoil too much.
That sort of thing. And so, like, all of these things come together so well. And like I said, the animation, I would say, is on par with Violet Evergarden for being the best animated of the year. For things that aren't movies, because, I mean, we haven't watched every single movie that came out in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe some movies could maybe go up there, but...
It's gorgeous.
Yeah, it is gorgeous.
The whole bridge scene, if you see nothing else, just watch the bridge scene. It's gorgeous.
It is exceptionally well acted. Everybody feels real.
Legitimate.
They feel like real people. They're not putting on, a character. They're not like, oh, I'm going to be the spunky one and I'm going to be the tough one. No, they're just people because that's what we want. That's what you want them to be.
Yeah.
You don't want them to fit archetypes.
Right.
And I mean, not to say that there isn't the one who's like, I'm a little bit more. I'm a little bit of a more bitch. Athletic, or something like that. Yeah. But I mean, that's
you find out
normal
why.
Personalities. That's not like, oh, we need a spunky one, so this one will be the spunky one. It's like, no, they are who they are based on their experiences.
Yeah.
And it makes sense for them to act that way because of that.
Yeah. That was like the one where it's like, oh, she kind of comes off as a bitch, but it's like, you find out why.
Yeah.
You find out why she has a bit of a shell and why she can't be totally honest with people. And you find out more, as the story goes on, more about each of them and, like, what's holding them back and why they went to Antarctica. and it's really, really good.
It's we were talking before we came on air.
Yep.
It's a 10.
Yep.
We don't think it's as good as Made in Abyss, but like,
well, you're talking about
two entirely different types of shows.
They're both 10s. They're just different types of 10s.
Yeah, it's just I'm just like, even when you're looking at 10s, it's a 10. It's wonderful. It is magnificent.
Again, you're also looking at something else where we're talking about, like, obviously different things are working for each. Made in Abyss is very much dark, and it's not for everybody. Place Further Than the Universe is very much more for more audiences. It's very sweet. It's endearing. It's more...
I would feel like A Place Further Than the Universe is more universal, and I would want more people to watch it. It wouldn't bug me if I told somebody about Made in Abyss and they were like, that sounds like too much for me. I'd be like, okay, I get it. If I told somebody about A Place Further Than the Universe and then they were like, no, I don't want to watch that, I'd be like, please. Like, please. Like, I feel like it's an important one to watch.
Yeah, it's very much... I feel like, in a really, like, corny way, I feel like you understand yourself better by watching it. You understand, like, I remember her, she was like, I think it's in the very first episode, she's like, well, when I was younger, I had so many dreams, and it's like, she's like, give or take, in her teens, like, she hasn't, like, not light in her life or anything, but I remember having that same thing where, when I was little, I was like, by this age, I'm going to be doing this, and this, and this, and none of that happened. And I can understand that feeling of feeling stagnant at some point in your life, where you're like, why hasn't any of this stuff happened? What's stopping me? What's slowing me down? Why didn't it happen by now? What am I not doing? And it's like, well, maybe I need to take some risks. Maybe I should go and try this thing out. Maybe it'll lead me to what I feel like I should be. And it's just really great. It's very meaningful. It's very sweet. The characters are wonderful. It's very enjoyable. It's like a mixture between like a book and a movie. It's just so well done in that way. Yeah. It's just something where you just want to keep watching because it's so meaningful. And it's so legitimate. It takes a lot of the things that it brings up, especially with the Antarctica trip, about like food and weight and like just every tiny little bit of thing, like storms and all sorts of things of markings and things that the girls aren't just going there and being there. They have to get training to be capable of just being there.
Yeah.
Let alone
so
partaking.
They don't die.
Yeah, basically. So it's really good. So that's our thoughts on that. And I feel like if you want to know more, watch it.
Yeah.
It's great.
There was never a question.
Yeah.
Right after we finished it, because it was a January one. It was early in the year, but right after we watched it, I think both of us were like, "Well,
be it."
That's probably our number one."
Yeah.
Like when you watch something and you just have that feeling where you're like, "This was important."
Yeah.
That's how
even
that
if
felt.
After the fact, like going into Made in Abyss, I thought it would be a moe kind of mining bullshit. But after, way different feeling. Same with Rockago. I didn't know what to expect when I went into it. I wanted no information going in. It seemed a little dry when I went in, but by the end I was like, that was incredible. Yeah. Like, it was so good. It's just things that might be surprising initially, but you need to give it a chance, especially this one. It's for it's for most people, I would say. It has I can't
imagine, like, unless the only thing in anime you care about is battle shonen and, like,
I know
Dragon Ball Z is the best thing ever, and that's all I ever want to watch.
I know people who only love shonen and only love idol crap, so...
Yeah, okay. If you want to broaden your horizons in the least, this would be probably one of the first things I'd
anything out of our list that we've mentioned that you should watch, at least watch that. So, I think those are all our thoughts on our top 10.
Mm-hmm. As a whole, again, we were talking about this before we came on air, but we'll mention it now. Mm-hmm. On the whole, I believe, what consensus did we come to that...
About what?
That last year was a little bit stronger than this year?
Yeah, I feel like
the
last year...
were higher.
The highs, like the top 5, we knew instantly.
Yeah.
We knew right away. This one, we knew the top 2 for sure, instantly, and the rest were like, well, they float around a lot. Like, why is this better than this, or this, or this, or this? I found that, comparatively, if you look at the list, that some of the ones on our list this year beat out last year's and vice versa. So it's, in a way, a lot of equality, but at the same token, if you look at it, just the heavier hitters were last year. But I feel like this is a good year. A lot of people crapped on this year, but it wasn't bad. I just feel like the golden children were more so last year.
And there was a lot of like just really good like safe anime, I guess you could say. Like Radiant has been pretty good.
Yeah.
Black Clover has been improving immensely.
I'm not sure where else you're going.
Like, Overlord's
was
been good.
enjoyable.
The time I got reincarnated as a slime has
that's
been
really
fun.
enjoyable. I love
like,
them.
There's been a lot of just really good, solid anime this year.
Yeah, the ones that are enjoyable, but not like top 10 quality. Something that didn't stick out about them, or something that was just like, it's like a lot of other things. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Where these ones kind of stuck out for obvious reasons. You know, My Hero Academia, because it was great. Violet Evergarden, because it was beautiful. Devilman Crybaby, because it was a hard R. And it was well done. You have Golden Kamuy for just being a fucking shit show that's like a Tarantino movie. You have Otaku, because it's your rom-com. You have your remakes, like Legend of the Galactic Heroes. You have other stuff like that. You have Megalobox, which is a different kind of take on Ashita no Joe. You have Eurocamp, which is just a chill fest. You have things that are just unique enough to be remembered, but something that's not remembered for the fact that it's amazing. Mm-hmm. If that's the best way to put it for this year.
a lot of sevens.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with a 7. Like,
no.
We're watching Radiant.
I'd rather have a bunch of 7s rather than it being heavily like 10, 1, 4, 6. It's like, fuck.
Yeah, because, hey, every week we're watching Radiant. And we're watching, Reincarnated as a Slime. And
Karakuri Circus.
We watched Overlord, which Sugar and I disagreed on a little bit, but on the at the end of the day...
I still enjoyed it, but there was still, to me, some glaring problems, but it was good. Again, not great, but it was good.
It's a 7.
It's a 7
when
again.
We could populate an entire top 20 of 7s.
Or you have ones that were close to an 8 or were an 8, but didn't compare to the other 8s we had on our list. There's just something about them that didn't compete.
Like Gakuen Babysitters.
Yeah, I think I rated that pretty high, but it's when you compare it to the other 8s, it's like,
This is an 8. The other ones are like an 8.1, 8.3, something like that.
You have things, it's just other things that are, you just start comparing. That's part of the objective, then subjective. So you're looking at, with us, it's checklists, it's animation, music, flow, pacing, you name it, character development, story, like narrative.
Ongoing narrative,
it's all things that check off, and after a while you're like, well, there's nothing wrong. Like My Hero Academia, I can't think of anything wrong. Some people complain about the pacing, but that's not a complaint because that has to happen.
This is what I will just say is that My Hero Academia is going to be our One Piece. We're not, you and I, we aren't big in One Piece, but if this goes like 800 episodes,
it'll be like our Naruto.
We're watching 800 episodes.
We watched Naruto for a long time.
Yeah, but I mean, Naruto, the thing with that is that they had so much filler, and it seems like
we still watch the
It seems like they're avoiding that so far.
I mean, in the sense of, commitment.
Yeah. That's the one thing that I will say, is that
My Hero Academia will always hold a place in my heart.
People who want more anime that will just continually on go, they want more like what Black Clover is doing in Boruto. Remember how that impacts the quality. Boruto has already started to get into some filler, and the animation quality has dipped at times. Black Clover, they're going to start getting into filler very soon because they're starting to catch up.
And people
allow it to take 6 months even, just so
even
that you get, all killer.
I found it so weird when, My Hero Academia made that announcement that's like, it won't be till October. People are like, oh, if they take this much time off, they're going to lose fans. They're going to lose this and this and this. It's like, they're going to lose fans if they shit the bed, too. So they're not going to rush into this. Like, people, no one says it about Attack on Titan, but that's what happened. Like, they lost a bunch of fans, and then they shit the bed.
Attack on Titan got better in Season 3.
Yes, Season 3 did get better, and I feel like they took that time that was needed, rather than, I don't know what happened to Season 2, and as I saw, one of the comments told me to shut up, which is funny to me. But, Season 2 was bad. You can't say it was good, and if you say it's good, I'd love the evidence. audience because I ripped it apart and it was bad. Season 3 was so much better. They took the time. They decided to finally, like, commit. Like,
and
yes.
I'll bet you almost anything. One Punch Man comes in with season 2 like 3 years later. It's still going to have that huge audience.
It's still going to have an audience. There's always going to be that audience. It's just whether or not people get busy in life or not.
And you know what? Hunter x Hunter's dub will probably be done by the time we get to October. So then there you go. Yeah. October will just roll right into My Hero Academia.
Yeah, it should be done before October.
I am much more about if they want to take a year off, if they want to do a season and then take 9 months off, come back, do one season a year, that just makes the quality better. It ensures that the content that you're getting is more aligned with the manga. You're not having that issue of having filler. Look what happened to the original Fullmetal Alchemist, where they caught up and then passed the manga. So they made an ending which was fine, but it does not compare to Brotherhood.
No. So you have a point with Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood and Fullmetal Alchemist that those things can happen. If they get too ahead of themselves, they're like, well, shit, we need to catch up and all that crap. So there is filler. It happened with Naruto, happened with One Piece. It happens a lot when stuff like that happens. So if they take the time, it's fine. But at the same token, you can't be hard on people when you want this quality. You're like, oh, this is shit. What the fuck happened? And this is, everyone complains. It makes me so frustrated. It's just like, just be happy that we're getting this thing. And if it's great, that's awesome. If it's bad, well, we'll figure out what happened and they'll try and learn from it. Or else they won't, whatever. It's just what happens.
Like, trust in, especially with My Hero Academia, trust in their process.
I trust completely in Horikoshi. He is so good. Mm-hmm. He is, I totally understand him from a fan perspective. And he totally understands us. And I don't think that he ever plans to let the fan base down because he's that serious about it. Whereas other things, Hunter x Hunter, I kind of expected to be disappointed.
It's not.
Once I knew about the person, it kind of like, oh, I see what happened or why things didn't happen. Put it that way. But anyways, thank you so much for joining us. This next year, we're going to keep doing what we do. I know some of you say do more reviews, do this, do that. And depending on the time I have and so forth, because there's no Patreon or anything going on right now, again, if you have ideas, you can let me know. But I know I have a couple weeks off here with school. Knowing my luck, I'll get sick because I feel it creeping up on me. But, I still have that big video to do. I'm hoping to, make a big dent, if not finish. I'm not promising anything because I know me and shit happens. And at the same token, I hope to catch up on some things that I've been missing out on or been planning to watch for a long time. Because I was like the other day, one of my friends and I, even Jeff and I was like, I've really wanted to watch blank for a long time. He's like, why don't you? I was like, because I have to finish this season.
And we were looking at winter 2019, and the list is now, I think, at least a dozen.
It's a lot.
At first we were like, well, this doesn't look like a lot. And it was like, oh. Yeah. Neverland comes out in January.
Yeah, lots of things I'm excited about. Yeah, and there's things that are like, still haven't finished from this season. Things I have to get caught up on. So it's
Karakuri Circus will continue on.
It's a never-ending game of tag that, and a YouTube animator, YouTube anime, commentators will always say that they'll never catch up, and that's obviously true. But it's always that feeling of needing or wanting to catch up.
And you know what? I am going to make a promise right here, right now. When it comes onto Netflix, even if we got to kick and scream through it, we're watching Evangelion.
Well, I'd like to watch the original first, then do that, but yes.
Well, this is going to be the original, just redubbed.
Yeah, but there's always something missing. Even though people say that, I always have that feeling that something will be wrong. Even Ghost in the Shell, they're like, oh, don't worry. And I was sadly worried. And sadly was proven right. I knew it was going to be wrong. But anyways, without even seeing the first, my story. I watched it after the fact and it made my smile go away pretty quickly. But anyways, thank you so much for joining us. Let us know what your top 10 were or just what your favorite was of the year. And let us know if there's anything maybe we missed. Some things we didn't have a chance to watch. Other things we just didn't feel like it made the cut. So, Happy holidays, Merry Christmas. I'll likely put out some more videos here. We still have to finish finish up the last few episodes of some of the ones that are ongoing, kind of have a natural stopping point, talk about this season, and then when Crunchyroll does its thing again in the near future, we'll be commenting on that too. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for joining me, Jeff.
Oh, of course, always.
And we will see you next time.